Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku was saved by Mr. Compress Part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see Part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. So let's start the video. A booster per day keeps the slime away. Pollen, with the lung I have left, I shouldn't take more risks than I should. I haven't yet found a good successor. Just a little thought. Just this one little thought and the universe went sideways. Nobody would know the story of Deku, the new modern All Might, the hero who would have become the new symbol of peace. Still, Yagi preserved his lung today, thinking about the slime criminal that was on the run. According to the police, it was hiding in the sewer. What were the odds that it went outside to hide? Quite low. He would let a hero with an accordingly adapted body go there. Did you see how bulked up he was? He couldn't move down there. 𝗂𝐿 may have burned up my notebook again today. But at least I got some good cards. As his absent father used to say, before going to America, you should always look at the bright side of the day. After all, his day could be worse. He could look like the blonde skeleton guy who seemed so frail that he could die by tripping over a rock. Coincidentally, his father tripped on a carpet before getting on the plane to America, falling headfirst over the railing. Izuku could swear he saw his mom watching with an icy stare. But she was his mommy and she always protected him. Hell, even 𝗂𝐿 knew better than to annoy or hurt Izuku when Auntie and Co was there. So, Izuku was going to forget that awkward fact in the box for inconvenient memories in the back of his mind. So, with the money he had left from his meals, Izuku had just enough to buy a new booster for the popular hero, the official card collecting game. It was one of the various games owned by the 𝐒𝐻𝐢𝐳 conglomerate. Hell, as far as Izuku knew, they even owned some old Occidental company and Nintendo as of now. Still, while not as exceptional as the day he and 𝗂𝐿 got the USSR All Might Argent era, presently the rarest in the world, it was a good haul. Endeavor, the hauler, and Ingenium, Backdraft, and Nezu. He always laughed at the idea that a vigilante who became a sidekick was rarer than the hero he worked for. Still, Izuku liked the card, and by association, the man that was printed on it. At least, it put a smile on his face, despite the tears he was still trying to hold in. Not before he could get to his bedroom. Perfect. A medium-sized skin suit. The card still in his hand, Izuku didn't have the time to register what was happening, before the slime was already on him, trying to suffocate him. Could it wear him like a suit? That would be wrong on so many levels. Would it kill him or was he trying to use him as a meat suit? So many disturbing questions that wouldn't stop popping up. The young boy tried to speak, to call for help. Somebody had to come. Maybe a hero with a smile, saying, "Don't worry, because I am here." But nobody came. As always, Izuku was slowly giving up. Why did he think he would get help? He was only Deku, the useless Deku. If people came to help 𝗏𝗏, maybe he would have gotten some help. Except for his mother, he knew the world was not merciful to his kind. Even the teachers at school never came to defend him. It was only 𝗂𝐿 when he said he had priority to bully Izuku before readily letting him go. If it makes you feel better, know that you're my hero. So don't worry, when I get to your home, your family will have a painless death, said the slime with a smile, as Izuku felt his consciousness fading away. Maybe it will be like Katsuki said. Maybe he would get a quirk in his next life. But his mom would cry so much. Mom, and then something happened. The second toe joint. The famous extra joint was the proof that the 𝗏𝗏less were less evolved. A study that had ruined Izuku's life. Well, few people in the world knew it was quite wrong. It could mean sometimes that the child was a late bloomer. The problem was that the quirk was often too powerful for the kid, and their brain would collapse, trying to rein in a quirk they couldn't control. Therefore, late bloomers were not well documented. Either that or the kid had a weak quirk but nothing in between. Still, better than being 𝗏𝗏less. What the slime and Izuku did not know was that the brain of the young man was just relaxed enough from the oxygen deprivation to withstand the strain of manifesting a quirk, and the outlet in his hand glowed. The pressure was just enough for the quirk to manifest, but not enough to collapse his brain. Something disappeared from Izuku's hand. Water strike. Something, or someone, washed away from Izuku the slime before his victim gasped for oxygen. Did someone save him? It was so strange, as if something just appeared in. When Izuku looked, he saw the hero Backdraft, a second before he decayed into a burnt card. Oh, what the hell? I mean, it was not normal for a hero to disappear just like that. Before Izuku could understand what happened, the slime started a new attempt at attacking the middle schooler. It lunged at him, ready to engulf him with its green slime once again. And you have a good quirk too. Perfect. A good what now? Izuku's eyes widened. It was too late to react now. He would a hand touched the slime from the bridge above them, and the slime disappeared, leaving only a small blue marble in its place. Still coughing, Izuku tried to look at the one who saved him, only to see a strange man, with a costume and a mask, elegantly dropping from above his cane, hitting the ground with a quiet yet audible sound. What a lack of elegance. Attacking a child, the utter contempt in the voice was as distinct as the disgust. A few seconds passed before our favorite hero nerd recognized his savior, as the magician grabbed the marble and kicked it as hard as possible, throwing it extremely far and above. 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗲. 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗲, one of the most known vigilantes in all of Japan. A villain according to the official news, but most forums put him in the vigilante category. Why? Solely because he was a thief who liked to steal from the rich villains, expose corruption, and on the internet. A few people linked his heist with a mysterious donation for the quirkless, the villainous quirk, or the mutant quirk foundations. It was quite difficult to take the money from the charities, especially All Might often being one donor. And the #1 hero had clarified that he wouldn't allow such generosity to go to waste, even if it came from a villain. Izuku was one of those who linked all of this, and he thought about how often the villain had dodged All Might and how many times the Endgame hero found a reason to not take care of the current heist by the mysterious thief. Therefore, he theorized 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗲 perhaps had the respect of the Endgame hero, which also explained why Endeavor had so much hate against the magician. The man was possibly one of the young boy's favorite heroes in the entire world. 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗲, as flamboyant as ever, laughed a bit before offering him a hand and helping him to his feet. "Hello, young boy. Quite the nice job you did there with your quirk," said the man with warmth in his voice, as if he recognized him or something. Izuku froze when he heard these words. A quirk, but he was quirkless. Besides, the hero backdraft was just there. How could he have done anything? But wait, backdraft's area was nowhere near here. Izuku could feel himself slipping into a panic attack, presumably caused by his brain trying to process the near-death experience and the apparition of the new quirk. He crumbled entirely and directly on the ground, breath quickening. The strange magician did what anyone would have, and patted Izuku's back, helping the kid regulate his breathing. He might be a vigilante, but all he wanted to do was to help people. "It is going to be okay. You were outstanding, kiddo," said the masked man, as Izuku tried to speak again, his breathing heavier than before. "Quirkless, I'm quirkless." 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗲 did not stop. He continued speaking and sat down on the ground beside Izuku. "Because you didn't manifest a quirk when you were young. The extra toe joint, etc., etc. Someone knew his work and had done his research. Oh dear, it was a fan." Izuku nodded as the man spoke with a soft voice, with none of the disgust or pity Izuku was used to hearing. Oh God, he was being consoled by a famous vigilante. Why did it feel way more personal, like there was a connection between them? "Congrats." 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗲 boomed with joy. You could hear his smile in his voice, clapping his hands for him. The famous thief was happy for him. "How? Why? You are lucky." "Well, not so lucky with the fact that you only manifested your quirk now, but hey, it happens. It happened to me as an example." Was it necessary to say that? Izuku stared at his savior with obvious disbelief and shock. What? Summed up quite what Izuku was thinking at this instant. "Why do you think no one knows my name?" "It is because my quirk came in late, just like yours. It allowed me to not register my quirk. Therefore, most people would pass my name over when checking who I could be. However, unlike yours, it was way too late for me to be a hero. I was like 20 years old, I think. So, I became the next best thing. Plus, a good friend of mine threw the Robin Hood legend at me after too much teasing." He added with some chuckles. Let's not mention his ancestry with the famous thief, Orochimaru, for very obvious reasons. You don't tell your biggest secret to a kid even if he's adorable and one of your fans. That the young boy had the same hair, though way fluffier than his old friend, was also a nostalgia factor to him. He wanted to pat his head in this green hair. Instead, 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗲 stood up, helping Izuku up as well once again. "I'm sorry, kiddo, but I can't stay in one place for too long, unless I want the likes of Endeavor or Hawks after me, trying to capture me. However, remember, this is your power," said the magician, his finger tapping on Izuku's forehead. "It is your choice to use it, to make it grow. Will you use it? Become a hero, a vigilante, or a simple barista? I don't know what your dream is, but here is some advice as you use the card. As a magician, I know way too well how a deception is a tool just as strong as your quirk itself. You should learn a bit about magic tricks and learn about your limits. Most late bloomers should explore their limit with patience, though. Otherwise, they could die. I can't stress this enough. It isn't like he saw that happen a few times. Still, he had to hop and go now." Izuku was still too shocked to react. And when he was ready to speak, 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗲 had already disappeared. He wanted to thank him, but as 𝗵𝘃𝗵𝗲 once said in one of his interviews, "I don't expect thanks. I just expect a smile on your face." Imagining that his new favorite idol was still watching over him, he put the biggest smile he could on his face and looked at his cards. Well, maybe he could try one more time. thought not with endeavor. If it was like when he summoned Backdraft. The situation hit 𝗧𝗑𝗧 hard as he realized the possible consequence, and he was not stupid. Burning a park was not the best way to test his new quirk, not to mention what Mr. Compress said at the end. He could die if he used too much of his power. Maybe he could try with some lesser card. Maybe a normal card with a hero that wasn't too strong. Despite the risk, a genuine smile grew on his face. After years of analyzing quirks, being called creepy and all other things, he could analyze his own quirk. As for the slime, it was found 2 weeks later. Supposedly, it hit a certain Yakuza with a bird mask. Overhaul reassembled the slime body into a more solid form before letting Rappa use it as a punching bag. That evening, at Midoriya's home, Mitsuki Bakugo was forced to call to be sure if it was them crying too much or if they had a localized flood. Yes, the mistake has already happened. 𝗏𝐽 couldn't believe what had happened at first. Then, 𝗧𝗏𝗃 used the Nezu card in front of her, and a small version of the UAS principle made a few movements before burning, leaving a charred card. Also, a very exhausted 𝗧𝗏𝗃, who laid down in the saloon as he went to sleep. 𝗏𝗏 was beaming with pride and joy about the situation. She did not care for him being quirkless or with a quirk. He was her son, and she was going to tear down anyone who would try to hurt her boy. She had already, though no one could prove anything about Hisashi's death. However, she knew how much it meant for her son, and how it affected his dream of being a hero. Maybe she could help. She knew what a late bloomer was. She was the childhood friend of one of them, and maybe she could ask him for some help. After all, 𝗧𝗏𝗃 couldn't show his power at school. However, he needed to train for it. So, he needed a teacher who knew what he was going through. Therefore, she did what every mother would have done. She grabbed her phone and dialed an old number that she hadn't called in years. What a shame she did not call him earlier. But he was happier thinking she did not know his activities. Atsuhiro-san, it's 𝗏𝗏. Are you free tomorrow? Her voice was saying, Atsuhiro, you're coming to dinner. Always fear the quiet one. The next day at school, 𝗧𝗏𝗃 was uncommonly happy. He had a quirk. True, his mother made him promise he wouldn't use it as long as he was not sure of his limit. She said she found a mentor for him. He was coming to dinner. He was also with a deck of cards. 𝗧𝗏𝗃 was still thinking about his meeting with the magician and how card tricks could prove useful. Mr. Compress was facing dangerous or powerful people like Maruko or Endeavor daily and won every single encounter, getting away while avoiding capture. Mr. Compress was not strong or had a powerful quirk that could help him fight. Well, Compress had a powerful quirk, but you needed to get close to your opponent to use it. Every fan knew he needed to touch you to activate the quirk. So 𝗧𝗏𝗃 was thinking, maybe he should hide his quirk. It was only a tool, after all. Maybe he could learn other tricks, some magic tricks. If he needed to use his cards, magic tricks were useful, hiding cards in his sleeves and other things like that. So, he better start now. Meanwhile, Katsuki Bakugo was looking at Deku with a weird feeling. For once, the nerd was not annoying him and was playing with some cards. No weird notebook, no gushing to him about how his quirk was awesome or All Might's latest fight. Not getting into trouble. He had to bail him out like the weak Deku he was. It was weird. So for once, Katsuki sat down with force in front of 𝗧𝗏𝗃 and looked at him. What are you doing, shitty Deku? Saying that 𝗧𝗏𝗃 was startled would be like saying that the water was wet. Katsuki was talking to him on his own terms. It was strange, but maybe he could. I asked a question. The angry teen with the explosive temper interrupted his thoughts. Magic tricks. I'm trying to learn some magic tricks. I thought it would be nice and less weird to others than taking notes. Well, I'm not good enough to do it while walking, so I was training on my own. Katsuki was looking at him, before nodding. It was about time you put some backbone into something, he said with a ferocious smile, to 𝗧𝗏𝗃's surprise. Soon after that, he got back up and that was that. The greenette was a bit confused. No violence, almost no insults. He was almost kind of nice for once. Weird. Still, 𝗧𝗏𝗃 appreciated the silence for once. So, the video showed the finger trick like that. Atsuhiro was smiling. He had not seen 𝗏𝗏 in years. The last time was when that dumbass husband of hers was leaving without divorcing. And if Atsuhiro left a marble at his feet to shift his equilibrium and let him fall to his death, no one had to know. There was no proof, after all. Just because he did not like killing, that did not mean he was not capable of murder. So he was happy to see her and eat her delicious cooking again. Being a famous thief was taking up so much of his time. After all, he did not have many connections, except for Jiren and that strange fellow barman, Kurogiri. He made such a wonderful Manhattan. Oh, and let's not forget Magni and Kaisum. However, seeing normal people was nice, just like that green kid yesterday. Atsuhiro hoped that the kid would grow into something nice. Hell, it would have been fun to mentor him, but he was right to leave as soon as he did. He had seen Hawks in the area, most likely because he stole some files from the HPSC. Who would have guessed it would piss the HPSC enough to send their prized hero after him? Oh well, time to give them to that agreeable fellow without a nose. Quite crazy, but a deal was a deal, even if he betted over a round of poker. So it was with a smile that the man went for a stroll in the city, and stole the wallet of Mount Lady, simply because he could, and honestly, it was too much fun to watch her trying to comprehend how someone stole it from her chest. 𝗓𝗂𝗧𝗵𝗲, said an excited voice from below as 𝗂𝐧𝐿 was still in his room, doing his homework and practicing his skills. Their guest, most likely. And he was positively happy to see his mom. 𝗧𝗵𝗲-san, you should call more, you know, said his mother with a tone that plainly said, if you don't call more, you will have some issues with me. Nobody wanted to have issues with 𝐭. Still, it was obviously their guest. 𝗂𝐧𝐿 smiled once again, like the sunshine he was before going downstairs. There he saw a tall man, who seemed quite ordinary. Brown short hair, brown eyes, a face neither ugly nor beautiful. Hell, if he was a wanted man, most people would have trouble describing him. Nonetheless, 𝗂𝐧𝐿 smiled at the silent man. Good evening, Mr. Sako, beamed the sweetest bean in the world to his idol. 𝐭 laughed a bit at her friend, undoubtedly stunned by the cinnamon roll that was her son. Even she was sometimes not immune to that smile. So Atsuhiro with no defense against it. Yep, full effect guaranteed. Though she couldn't guess the part they already met. 𝗂𝐧𝐿 had hidden the almost got killed by a villain from her. 𝗂𝐧𝐿, let me introduce you to Atsuhiro-san. You saw him once or twice when you were much younger. He is a late bloomer, just like you. 𝗂𝐧𝐿 went full-on quirk nerd instantaneously. And he assaulted Mr. 𝗵𝗲 with so many questions he considered marbling the kid to calm him down before thinking about how 𝗏 would gut him soon after that. Not to mention the fact it would oust him as Mr. 𝗵𝗲. Calm down, kiddo. Yes, I'm a late bloomer, and no, I don't have health issues. Principally because I had your mother to help me deal with it when we were young. 𝗏 laughed a bit, as she remembered the old time, directing her friend and her son toward the living room. Yes, I remember. You could create these tiny blue marbles at school. They were so beautiful. We never knew if it was made of lapis lazuli or a blue marble. 𝗂𝐧𝐿 looked at Atsuhiro. Atsuhiro stared back, his smile becoming strained. He could see the gears working in the child's head. The kid had 𝗏's brain. Oh, and what else did you do? Asked the boy naively, while Mr. 𝗵𝗲 was screaming inwardly. Please, 𝗏, don't talk about the book. Well, we were in the reading club. I remember I used to throw books at him when he was teasing me too much. He especially loved that old Robin Hood novel. Shit. Well, at least it was not like 𝗏 knew his job as a vigilante villain. So while the mom went to get the drink, he looked at 𝗂𝐧𝐿. Atsuhiro feared only a few things in the world. All for one was one of them. Endeavor was another. Nedzu when he was without tea. And 𝗏, especially when she was mad. If she knew what he was doing daily, she would maim him for endangering himself so often. Private lessons if you don't tell your mom. 𝗂𝐧𝐿 smirked. You'll also teach me how to fight if I don't tell her that Mr. 𝗵𝗲 stole from the HPSC yesterday. You drive a hard bargain, gasped the vigilante before 𝗂𝐧𝐿 inhaled as if he was going to speak aloud. Oh God, you have a deal. Please say nothing to her. 𝗂𝐧𝐿 smiled at the magician with a smile, evidently contrasting the fact that he just blackmailed one of the most powerful thieves in the world. If he was not the target of said blackmail, it would impress 𝗵𝗲. When 𝗏 heard her boy threaten her childhood friend, she had mixed feelings. Should she tell him it was bad or be proud of him for standing his ground? In the end, she chose pride, as it was better for 𝗂𝐧𝐿. Who knows, maybe he would finally fight for himself at school. Also, she was almost certain that Atsuhiro would use her former hell training for skinny man on her son. It would do some good for her boy, and she feared that if she trained him herself, she was going to be too soft. This evening, Atsuhiro got a disciple and the best meal he had in years. Also, 𝗏 made him promise he would come one evening per week for dinner and tell her how much 𝗂𝐧𝐿 progressed. So, Atsuhiro-sensei. Mr. 𝗵𝗲 loved that name. Why are we in this dump? The Dagaba Beach, former dating spot of the year, back when he was a young man. A few years before 𝗏 got married. Everyone makes mistakes, okay. And he absolutely did not miss his chance with 𝗏 because of that damn playboy, Hisashi. If only he could again make him fall. Maybe he had a few unresolved issues. Well, let's not delve into the past. Instead, let's train a hero. Well, first, because nobody comes here. Second, it is very nice to test your power and not hurting anything, and there is a nice hospital for quirkless that owes me a favor or two close to here. Since I wish to stay as a male, I prefer to transport you there immediately to not of your mom coming at me. Explain Atsuhiro, while doing some stretching. Also, you will learn how to fight even on uneven ground. Not to mention, of course, some physical training. 𝗂𝐧𝐿 had a feeling of dread, as his mentor pulled out from a marble an old diary with written cutely "Road to be the best 3. Mr. 𝗵𝗲 had a terrifying smile. One saying obviously, you can pray to God. But spoiler alert, I won't be listening. Did mom approve this training? Asked the scared teenager. She wrote it. For Atsuhiro, but that went unsaid, as he wanted to torture 𝗂𝐧𝐿. The teenager wondered for a second if he did the right thing by blackmailing an S-rank villain. At the end of the week, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, who couldn't move any part of his body, thought, yes, it was worth it. At the Alder Middle School, 𝗧𝗵𝗲's change did not go unnoticed. First, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 continued training his magic tricks. Atsuhiro told him it was an excellent idea, as card tricks and misdirections were quite useful in battle. Also, for pickpocketing. Hell, people began to think that making cards disappear and reappear was his quirk. A weak quirk, but a quirk. Well, at least until 𝗧𝗵𝗲 explained it was not a quirk. His body, becoming leaner and well-toned, also grabbed the attention of some girls in Bakugo. Noticeably, the blonde boy saw 𝗧𝗵𝗲 running in the morning with a strange man he did not know. The angry boy told 𝐭 and Auntie explained to him that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was finally taking the hero thing earnestly and training hard. Bakugo was at first angry, and then became angrier. It was out of the question that Deku was going ahead of him. Therefore, young Bakugo trained even harder after school, having less contact with some boys at school. After all, Deku was training every day. How could Bakugo do less than Deku? A bit more tea, Mitsuki-san, asked 𝗏, her pot of tea ready for her best friend. Boom. With pleasure, 𝗏. So, how is Atsuhiro-san as of now? The explosion just outside fazed none of the women. Oh, you know, he tries to be there as much as possible for 𝗧𝗵𝗲, but he's quite busy himself. However, he trains my young boy very hard. Do you want me to ask if he can train Katsuki? This was quite true, as Mr. Compress couldn't disappear for too long. He had people to leave as destitute and criminals to punish. Big bang attack. The two women could hear the loud noise in the background, as Katsuki trained hard. Oh, 𝗏, you're too kind. However, I don't think that Katsuki would be compatible with his training indeed. As much as Mitsuki loved her boy, he was anything but subtle. It was better to leave that to a more sensible person, such as 𝗧𝗵𝗲. He was so adorable. He made a coin appear from her ear. You have a point. Also, I think you prefer when you dine with only 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and Atsuhiro, right? Mitsuki teased a bit. She knew about Atsuhiro's childhood crush. Also, she was against 𝗏's relationship with Hisashi. When asked, she stated that she did not use her power to make that one passage slippy in the airport. Nothing suspicious there at all. What does that mean? The chubby mother said strongly to her friend, her eyes narrowing. Nothing, said Mitsuki with a face, not unlike her son when he had a wonderful opportunity to embarrass 𝗧𝗵𝗲. My dear Atsuhiro, don't worry, I'm rooting for you, thought the blonde woman. During his day off, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 learned more about the different cards. Be it hero cards or another game. It would allow him to learn more about his limitations. And he needed as much edge as possible on his sleeve. So, he tried to do the most sensible thing and go to a game shop so he could buy cards and play with them. That was the first time that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 faced a neckbeard, a fearsome creature that lived in their mother's basement. They are huge jerks, trolls, goblins, and basement dweller, especially when the newcomer is a living sunshine way too pure for this world. While most people would just try to protect 𝗧𝗵𝗲, the neckbeard can't stand purity and wants to corrupt it. So, when 𝗧𝗵𝗲 asked for a game, all players redirected him toward a certain someone in the back of the shop. The player in question was something that the usual inhabitants of the shop couldn't deal with. He was too creepy and they couldn't kick him out of the shop because their survival instinct told them it was a bad idea. He was one of the biggest spenders in the shop. Even his smiles were saying, I'm going to kill you, eat your corpse and use your remains for a satanic ritual. Yes, all players send 𝗧𝗵𝗲 toward 𝗬𝗵𝗲 Shigaraki. The young man was here in his sensei's order to learn some social skills, so he tried to give his best smile. His best 𝗬𝗵𝗲 smile. Welcome to the game, hero. What happens between boys? Let us roll back a bit in time. A few weeks ago, young master, if you don't go outside to meet people, I'm going to throw you outside. Despite being a bioengineered nanny for the man-child we all know and love, Kurogiri was done. 𝗬𝗵𝗲 somehow stayed 5 days without sleeping and washing, playing games alone in his room. I don't need to meet NPCs. I need to keep playing. The last edition of The Monster of Frankenstein narrowed his non-existent eyebrows and did the most logical thing to do. He took Shigaraki's console and threw it in a portal. Shigaraki was looking with stupefaction at his caretaker. My video games, said the boy, who didn't quite handle his own rage yet. Then Kurogiri threw 𝗬𝗵𝗲 through another portal, toward a hot bath. Yes, 𝗬𝗵𝗲 still wore his clothes, but the Namu was quite done with the smell and just wanted it to be done. You will get your video games back only when I get a receipt proving you bought something in a store and at least tried to meet people, said the Black Mist Man, still angry at the boy for being such a living pile of waste. 𝗬𝗵𝗲 having a decaying power wasn't an excuse to rot, especially if his smell was propagating in the bar. It was a respectable establishment and the only thing his former personality liked in this life. But 𝗬𝗏 tried to plead weakly to Kurogiri before the cloud looked angrily at his charge. No buts. If you don't wash and do what I just said to do, I will directly report to Sensei. The ultimate threat. The ultimate one. Even 𝗬𝗏 became livid at those words and washed quickly. Then 𝗂𝐸𝐳 made the decay boy clean himself a second time as he forgot to take off his clothes the first time. Oh well, at least the clothes were cleaner. He still had to clean Tamura's room now. 𝗂𝐸𝐳 wistfully reflected upon the misery of his own existence as he cocked his guns and made sure that the flamethrower was ready. Yes, it was something that Tamura was supposed to be doing. However, 𝗂𝐸𝐳 was now sure that indigenous life forms were born from his prote's trash, and now he had a cleanup to do. 𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧 say, it is time for a tidy up. Also, I never liked Prometheus, said the battle butler before beginning the purge. It is said that the battle ended after 5 quite intense days. Yes, Kurogiri took some breaks to make sure 𝗵𝗲 went out as expected, but still, All for One found the footage hilarious to see. He also asked Kurogiri to burn all the corpses, just to be sure that they wouldn't come back. After all for One was an evil genius, and he saw the alien saga. No way he was going to experiment on that. Now, back to 𝗵𝗲. First, the blue-haired criminal found a place with games. Not too sunny and without too many kids running around. This excluded most cybercafes, as they were often the noisiest places in the world. It also excluded him from the possibility of just hanging out in a video game store. Besides, they have banned him from most because of his decaying habits. It was not his fault if sometimes he couldn't remember to not put his 5 fingers on something. Damn it. The second thing that was right now maddening him is the fact he had to hang out in a mall. Kurogiri restrained him inside and took his ID, so he couldn't even try to get wasted. Once again, he had to be reminded of what happened the last time he was drunk. Supposedly, he may have decayed the support beam for a railing at an airport and some dumbass fell to their death. He was also way younger, and his former caretaker before Kurogiri, someone he named random NPC Endgame, did not know the difference between an apple juice and an apple liquor. That could have happened to anyone. Still, the young man with the same hygienic habit as a nerdling had to find a den to restore himself and at least technically complete his task. The answer appeared. A store that had better days, with a former stylish front but now just tacky, with a wyvern nesting on a pile of goods made of cards and books. The Den of the Drake. Card games were a kind of game, after all. Also, even if he couldn't get drunk, he could still buy a lot of things with Sensei's money. Hello, young man. What are you searching for? Asked an old vendor, with a beard well taken care of. Maybe it had something to do with the fact he was using it to work on his computer. 𝗵𝗲 pondered the thought a moment before answering. Game, Villains vs. Hero. I want a villain starter pack. His demand caused snickering in the shop from the old patrons of the shop, except they must pay their share, as the shopkeeper, despite their attitude, did nothing. Thus they did what they did best. They snickered. Well, there is the hero. Game. Nobody plays villains and most people play different teams of heroes against each other. We recommend the UA starter for beginners. Either 𝗵𝗲 wasn't terrifying and horrible enough or the shopkeeper was used to seeing creepy guys like him. Even as the criminal stared at him, the man quietly took out an old package with the UA symbol and the special Endeavor Valedictorian edition. Not the rarest as they included it in the package, but most people choose to keep it as it is often their first super rare card. 𝗵𝗲 looked at the deck and thought a bit. Pitting heroes against heroes. Tempting. He should see if it was funny. No villains. They have their separate editions, but the HSPC asked for them to be not as powerful as the heroes. The 𝐒𝐻𝐢𝐵 circumvented it. Either you have a powerful villain unit but they're rare or cost a hefty penny, or you can play swarm tactics with typical cannon fodder. I recommend a mix of both. One powerful villain such as the Architect, especially as he has passive boosting minions with his type and minions to wear out the heroes. Though I recommend not playing such a deck against an Endeavor, burn-in composition. 𝗵𝗲 gave a confused look at the man, before looking better at the UA deck and the second villain deck. Indeed, it was minions and villains bosses were only obtainable via booster, so you needed luck or money before you could use that kind of deck. How high are the odds of finding a villain boss in the booster? 𝗵𝗲 asked, while his game-geared mind calculated things beyond anyone else's comprehension. Around 1 in 100 packages, explaining why they aren't popular. Then, the shopkeeper heard the words that made 𝗵𝗲 nearly untouchable in his shop. How many villain booster packs do you have? Yes, our favorite villain had taken out the black card. The bearded man's eyes turned into yens and took every villain booster he had. It was a hefty quantity. 𝗵𝗲 continued to get affection points from this charming NPC by telling him he was going to buy off it. That day, 𝗵𝗲 got the UA deck, as it was the cheaper deck with the rules for it and around 90 villain boosters. He got his first boss, Muscular Bloodbath Edition. He was one of those villains bosses without a gang. In fact, his apparition wiped out the field, including allies. However, his strength was equal to the number of units destroyed that way. That day, 𝗵𝗲's smile killed 5 puppies. That's how the villain gained his place in the shop. the weirdo who would spend a fortune only to play with villains. If, at first, the other clients laughed at his antics, 𝗵𝗲 taught them to fear because he used tactics that were just myths before. Minions swarming, boss summoning. He kept improving himself, almost with every game he played. He became known as that cheating munchkin with too much money, a name feared in 𝗵𝗲 playing community. The villain domination had begun. And then, one player arrived. A green-haired guy with a smile just as pure as the blue-haired guy was rotten. One who had just a custom deck, with no logic behind it, like, for example, the Maruko deck. Go easy on me. It's my first time, asked 𝗧𝗑𝗍. 𝗵𝗲 smiled, and the game began. As if mercy existed, 𝗳𝗵𝗲 annihilated 𝗧𝗑𝗍. It was pure humiliation. A player receiving such an embarrassing defeat was bound to disappear. Except that the green bean beamed at his partner. Oh my god, that combo was amazing. Was it you being nice? I can't wait to see what you can do when you play. 𝗧𝗑𝗍 was so used to being beaten up that losing in a children's card game did not affect his morale in the least. In fact, he loved to make his brain work as much as he was enjoying his daily workout with Mr. Compress. As the man said, in the show, you need both brains and brawn. 𝗵𝗲 did not expect such a reaction, but prepared his deck again to face his opponent. Well, you're lucky then. I can't go back home until this evening, so I have the time for a few more games if you're up to it. 𝗧𝗑𝗍 was not an opponent within the same league as him, but since all other NPCs were too afraid to continue to grind against him, well, he had to take his fun where he could after all. It was a fun challenge, even though 𝗵𝗲 would deny it. That is how he became friends with a kid young enough to be his little brother. When Kurogiri heard his charge talk about needing a new tactic to fight Zuzu, the 𝗏𝗏 thought he was speaking of a new boss. He was surprised and cried some tears after learning that 𝗵𝗲 was speaking about another human being. They are quite cute, as they couldn't keep burning expensive heroes cards. Mr. Compress had the simple idea to use a tarot card for 𝗧𝗑𝗍, a normal one that you could find in pretty much all markets. So, to start, they used the weakest card on the deck, and now faceless humanoids surrounded both of them. The only thing differentiating them was the number on their face and a mark on their white torso. 𝗧𝗑𝗍 could summon around all 3's cards and all 4's before his nose bled, which was a good way to measure his limits. Yes, Atsuhiro made 𝗧𝗑𝗍 do a brain scan when the nose bled for the first time. Best way to see if his marvelous brain was affected. According to the test, the bleeding was the signal to not push more than what he had already done. So they did not. Instead, Atsuhiro took a malicious pleasure in making 𝗧𝗑𝗍 work his body to his utter limit. He brought him on his back more than once. The fact he was seeing 𝐭𝐸 during those moments was a plus, yes. No, he was not expecting her kind smile every time he arrived at her house. He also asked Mitsuki for 𝗏𝗏𝗏's favorite flowers only as a reward for her kindness and her delicious cooking. She even made him a few meals in a bento for the week, so he did not have to cook. Mitsuki, for her help, got some rare fabrics that Mr. Compress found for her. It was not a bribe to avoid the constant teasing. It was quite fun to make 𝗧𝗑𝗍 more flexible. The boy was so nervous that he was quite rigid. 𝗏𝗏𝗏's regimen could do wonders in a situation like that. The magician remembered his old PE teacher telling him he had never seen someone that straight. Atsuhiro smiled while he was reading the various exercises described inside of it, how it had been fun to practice with her, and how she stopped coming because she found someone. Stub. That was a bad spiral. Instead, it was funnier to torture, train 𝗧𝗑𝗍. Also, it was pleasant to just speak with her again when 𝗧𝗑𝗍 went to sleep. Kiddo, if you aren't able to touch your toes with your hands, you're gonna lift that dishwasher to the truck. The threat was quite effective as the boy was even more inspired to complete the exercise. Touching his feet, while being suspended in the air, head upside down. Flexibility and abs with the little addition of endurance. Being a teacher was quite fun. Atsuhiro-sensei, I did it, said a happy 𝗧𝗑𝗍, before seeing his teacher grabbing a paintball gun. The modified kind with a lot of bullets. Good. Now, run. It's time for the paintball. 𝗧𝗑𝗍 almost asked for details before seeing the smile of his teacher. The greenette promised himself to ask his mother what the hell was in the notebook, as he ran into the junkyard as fast as he could. Short answer, 𝗏𝗏𝗏 wanted to create the most dangerous yet safe condition to train while making you fear for your life. Add to that, her minor telekinesis and Mr. Compress learned how to dodge bullets in front of him. Also, yes, she called this specific training the paintball because she removed the T. Meanwhile, 𝗏𝗏𝗏 was preparing dinner for 3 at home, making special katsudon for her son as she knew what he was going through with his trigger-happy, traumatized teacher who had an outlet. Boys, it was so fun. Now all she had to do was to get Atsuhiro to stay to sleep. Just one night. Then he would belong to her. 𝗧𝗑𝗍 wondered a bit why his mom had an evil laugh. It had been 3 months since Atsuhiro began 𝗧𝗑𝗍's training. Katsuki was running in the morning alongside Deku while wearing weight on his ankles. To be fair, he did that after seeing 𝗧𝗑𝗍 doing the same and even keeping them at school. While the blonde explosive living boy would never admit it to his friend, He had a begrudging respect for the hellish training 𝐒𝐽 went through. Respect, because the nerd understood that a big brain alone would never make him a hero. Well, it could, but 𝐒𝐽 was analysis smart, not mad science mad. Even then, 𝐬𝐬𝐴𝐴 would have not been as hard on him as he had been if the broccoli had said he would become a support analyst hero. Hell, 𝐬𝐬𝐴𝐴 would have even encouraged him and asked him to be his sidekick. 𝐒𝐽 was quite crazy in his analysis despite what everyone thought. But no, Midoriya insisted on being a fighting hero, the kind that fight villains, and he would have never forgiven him if villains killed 𝐒𝐽 on the field. So yeah, sometimes he went heavy on Deku, such as that time with the swan dive. Not his proudest moment. As for the notebook, well, it was harsh but necessary. Right, Deku may have found a letter on his windows with an SSR Ryukyu with his apologies. 𝐬𝐬𝐴𝐴 would deny it in public. Still, Deku went through an even harder training than what Kaken could imagine himself. Despite what everyone thought of him, 𝐬𝐬𝐴𝐴 wasn't just talented, he also put in a lot of effort, trying new moves and failing head-on. This, in retrospect, may have been the second reason he was hard on Deku. 𝐬𝐬𝐴𝐴 made a lot of effort to become a hero. Deku seemed to wait for it to come from heaven as if all might would descend from it, offering 𝐒𝐽 training and a quirk. Who the hell did he think he was, to look down on 𝐬𝐬𝐴𝐴's effort despite not having a quirk? He could have become a quirkless hero. Sure, someone like that didn't exist in Japan, but he was fairly sure that the Endgame hero French team had a quirkless fighter specialized in surprise takedowns like Eraserhead. You could do that quirkless. However, now, well, even 𝐬𝐬𝐴𝐴 had to admit that 𝐒𝐽 was training harder than him, hoping to realize their dream, which was quite necessary, as 𝐒𝐽 had a lot to catch up with. At least he knew he had to work harder to have a chance. At least that was his thought as he saw Deku sprint in front of him, and the usual bullets from his insane coach were coming from behind with insane accuracy, running and dodging. 𝐬𝐬𝐴𝐴 felt almost bad for him. However, he would lie if he did not find it funny as hell, too. Also, he did not miss the part where 𝐒𝐽 was still training his hand with a deck of cards, even while running and dodging. Something was up with that. The explosive boy was sure of it and will ask him about it later that day. Notably, 𝐬𝐬𝐴𝐴 paid more attention to what people thought and noticed an important thing. The deck that Deku was using was also incomplete. Deku would never allow that. 𝐬𝐬𝐴𝐴 was searching for his not friend in the middle of the afternoon break when he heard the usual sound of something being hit. Well, the sound of someone being hit, should he say. Another reason he was angry. The adults in Otter were useless and 𝐬𝐬𝐴𝐴 had to make the law instead of them. The boy was also pretty sure of who was hit. Grumbling that Deku was a pain in the ass, 𝐬𝐬𝐴𝐴 sprinted to see an unexpected spectacle. Deku, standing above two bullies and a girl with snake hair. 𝐬𝐬𝐴𝐴 was already pretty sure of what happened but had trouble processing certain parts. The part where Deku won a fight against someone who had a minor telekinesis quirk and the other had an excellent leg strength thanks to his sprung legs. Deku, the fuck? The dumbass looked at him with that damn bright smile, and he even had the gall to look ashamed. He had won the smile for fuck's sake. 𝐒𝐽 had the victor's bragging rights. Well, how to explain? A month ago today 𝐒𝐽, no strength training, Sako-san said with happiness in his tone. He was now coming to the Midoriya house at least 3 days per week. Mitsuki was having the time of her life teasing 𝐿𝐽 about the fact that her childhood celibate friend was already a stepdad for 𝐒𝐽. 𝐿𝐽 was blushing more and more at the idea, and Atsuhiro wasn't sure if she should tell Mitsuki to stop embarrassing her or thank her for doing that. Oh, thank God, said an overjoyed kid, with way too many bruises on his body, and the narrator swears it was not only the beating his bullies gave him. Well, depending if you choose or not to call Mr. Compressed training bullying. Instead, it will be battle training, said the man, cracking his hands with a certain delight. Oh fudge, cried our hero, feeling the pain to come, and also a bit of excitement. We will also work on your vocabulary, because it was an important point to address. If Deku was to become a hero, he had to have sass. We will learn today how to dislocate, as it is one of the most important parts of the fabulous compressed style, said the magician before putting his hand on his own arm and dislocating with a menacing sound. The spectacle was shocking to the Greenette student, who almost fainted before Compress put it back in place. The limp arm was quite the thing to see, and it looked terrible at first. See your reaction. This is why dislocating is an effective move. Let's be honest, 𝐒𝐽, said Mr. Compress with a gentle smile. Neither of us are powerhouse. While I'm quite agile and you become faster and more flexible, you aren't as strong as the weakest mutant quirk. To be fair, most of them would be stronger than me. So how do we fight? By being smart and technical. The right push in the wrong place. We will break kneecaps, we will break joints, and we will fuck up their shoulders. The warmth in the voice of Compress was alarming, and 𝐒𝐽 stared at him, trying to plan a question. Yes, it is your mother who created it this way for me. However, I spent years honing my skills. I'm also going to teach you how to dislocate your own limb. Why? Because it will save your life if you ever get captured, and when we will get into the vanishing act part of your training. "So, it is going to hurt, right?" said Izuku. He was resigned to his fate now, while still thinking he shouldn't have blackmailed his teacher. "Yes, but see it this way. If you had not asked, I wouldn't have to teach you that. Another lesson, karma is a bitch." So he was still salty about being blackmailed by a kid young enough to be his son, who he wanted as his son. Well, it was not a reason to hold back, right? A few moments later, "The hell is your problem? I never saw someone popping their bones like that without even crying." "My school offered with a timid smile our favorite broccoli. I'm putting it on my personal shit list." The heir of the king of thieves answered. His ancestor wouldn't have tolerated such a thing, and he wouldn't either. He was the thief of justice, after all. Why did he think that? Izuku just dislocated his own left arm, with way too much ease for it to be pure talent, before putting it back on for his first time. Same thing for his leg. While it hurt the young man, Izuku never cried during the process. It was the pain tolerance Mr. 𝗵𝗲 expected to have to build inside him, for Izuku to have it. Atsuhiro felt his teeth grinding. He spent so much time as Mr. 𝗵𝗲 that he had almost forgotten how it was to be quirkless. The exhilarating sensation of having the world in his palm. The fact he was feared and admired, his fame. That almost made him forget why he was donating so much. Seeing Izuku be like this, it made him beyond angry. Maybe his next action should be to bring some light on the quirkless issues. Izuku seemed to have felt his pain too, and he gave a sad smile to his teacher. "Hey, don't worry. This isn't as bad as it seems. It's bad only when Kaken isn't there to punish me." Kaken, Atsuhiro groaned at his name. He could see why Izuku still thought of him as a friend, but the boy was way too abrasive. And there are better ways to protect people than being an angry ball of spite. It was an endeavor too, 0 in the making. Still, he was indeed making sure that Izuku wasn't being hurt too much when he could, and giving Izuku protection. Overt protection would just paint against his back for those wanting to hurt Katsuki through him. "Izuku, I will give you an assignment. In the next 2 months, I want you to put the fear of you inside at least 2 bullies. Don't worry about the consequences. I can guarantee you the UA won't look at it." Nedzu owed him a few favors for some jobs against the HPSC. Time to cash them. "How can you be so sure?" Izuku was suspicious before his master reminded him of the first rule of any good magician. "Oh no, a good magician. Never reveal their secrets." "Yes, I know. Rule number 1. There are other rules, but Izuku was a slow learner of some of them. Like Mr. 𝗵𝗲's favorite, sanity is boring. Embrace the truth and free yourself of normality. Izuku still had a problem with this one. It also showed this in his analysis, as he was too straight-laced. Mr. 𝗵𝗲 was extremely looking forward to what ideas a mad Izuku could unleash. The magician thought Nedzu would look the other way about the violence Atsuhiro just asked Izuku to commit, and will put Izuku on the Stoats watch list. Yes, he was one of the few knowing what Nedzu was, because he helped him take back his file from the HPSC and left behind a nasty virus. However, if the young man wanted to be a hero, he needed to learn what Katsuki had understood. A hero should put the fear of him into the criminals so they don't act. However, he had a singular feeling about that. "Yes, well, Master Atsuhiro, I know I will have to be violent. However, I don't want to be that kind of hero. Though, then, please, tell me what kind of hero you want to be." I don't know. I often discuss heroics with a friend. He is, well, it is very interesting because he hates heroes, but he has arguments about that, even if he needs help to say it. The fame, the money. I get a hero will get those, but he's right when he says that too many of them are only in it because they want that. They are violent and they get to be icons. Not to mention all those who are just looking for a badge and the right to be violent. I mean, it isn't like you don't expose some of them each week. His teacher nodded as Izuku spoke. He continued his job like the one exposing corruption. Though it was not enough. The lack of reaction from the HPSC was the reason that this fellow Stain was becoming ruthless, advocating for a more permanent way of disabling fakes. Mr. 𝗵𝗲 had cut ties with him, but he could understand the frustration the hero killer got. At least, he was only using the list Atsuhiro found, and he was letting some of them live, meaning it was not killing for killing yet. If it ever came to that, Atsuhiro made it clear to Stain that when they would meet again, only one would walk out of the alley. Izuku then continued, "I don't think I can become a new All Might. He is just too much. No one can live up to him." But he said something a while ago, that an authentic hero should find a cause, a reason to fight. So, I don't want it to be as petty as scaring my bullies. This is an actual good point. Still, it was interesting to see that Izuku was, while still a ball of sunshine, asking himself some good questions. "Kiddo, you have years in front of you to decide what kind of hero you want to be. As long as you don't become a destructive hero or a corrupt one, you know I will be proud of you," said his mentor with a little smile, helping his almost stepson to get back up. "But now let's help you focus on the present. It is said that during the month, they could hear a green ghost crying. Well, harder than usual, that is. If the Izuku from the main universe could see what his counterpart had to suffer, Maybe he would have found All Might training easy, because if 𝐒𝐽𝐽𝐫 followed the American dream, here it was more the highway to hell. Either you become strong or you abandon all hope and become strong. His teacher actually beat into him our dear 𝗧𝗑𝗧 how to fight. Now, let us go back almost to the present. As in, a few minutes before, Katsuki arrives to see 𝗧𝗑𝗧 apologetic for the unconscious body of his bullies. See, there were more than a few theories that Aldera is part of the Metal Liberation Army or at least a 𝗧𝗪 sympathizer. It was just stupidity and ignorance. Yet, in the social pyramid, if 𝗧𝗑𝗧, as a quirkless, was quite at the bottom of the school, people with villainous quirks were a close second. Ophidia, the girl with the snake hair, was the daughter of a Lamia mutant quirk, and her father could manipulate hair and be making a killing in hairdressing. However, the young girl was still someone who had hair and would hiss at you and try to bite you. As for why her name is not Japanese, it was because she had origins in Europe and not because the author is lazy and liked the name. Despite having a loving family, she was a close second to 𝗧𝗑𝗧 on the social ladder. Since 𝗧𝗑𝗧 also avoided more and more of his bullies, he was agile enough to just outrun them. On this day, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 also learned a lesson Atsuhiro couldn't have taught him: you can run away from your problem, especially as they become the problem of someone else. Don't look us in the eyes, monster. Yes, she's going to turn us into stone. Shut up. That isn't how my quirk works, and you all know it. Now, two things kids learn quickly are those who say that explaining why you aren't okay with things people say or just ignore them. Well, those who say that are very tall and strong are liars. The girl was now being held in a corner by the pyro and the spring boy, 𝗧𝗑𝗧, just above them as he was going down for the next period. Our green boy heard everything, and as he felt for one instant, his shoes became steel, as if they were lead heavy. All Might, what do you think makes a great hero? Well, as far as I know, every hero I respect had a similar story. One day, they heard someone asking for help and they bolted. That attitude, the fact of just moving to help others. This is the fabric of a true hero. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was mid-drop kicking the telekinetic boy when he stopped to think about All Might's interview. To the merit of the spring-legged boy, he tried to attack 𝗧𝗑𝗧 the moment he knocked out his friend. Unfortunately for him, his attacks were quite previsible for an 𝗧𝗑𝗧 who just spent an entire month in a battle against an S-rank villain with a sadistic streak. So, when the first high kick came, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 referenced a cult scene from Matrix by dodging the kick by falling almost against the ground. Almost being the keyword. The hit went into the wall as 𝗧𝗑𝗧 got back up. Oh shit, that must have hurt. Oh fuck you, man. He then got bitten several times by Ophidia on his back because, well, she could, and she was clearly not alone. Also, it was nice to have an outlet and let her snakes bite some dumbass. She did not have any venom, but it was quite nasty. It was when the bitten boy tried to punch her again that 𝗧𝗑𝗧 caught his arm, before popping it out of his joint, making the bully cry before Kaken arrived. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 then panicked and dislocated his good leg when Spring Boy tried to kick him. Only then did the shock make him pass out, too. Kaken was pinching his nose as 𝗧𝗑𝗧 stopped his tails, and Ophidia was nodding beside him. And so that is why I need you to help me hide them, Kaken. 𝗔𝗨𝗪𝗔𝗪𝗔𝗪𝗔. No, Deku. You did not level up from Deku. Katsuki screamed in his rage at his idiotic friend. Katsuki thought he had a Deku and a girl with snake hair and two unconscious dumbasses. If he let them be, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 would be in trouble. Teachers wouldn't care that 𝗧𝗑𝗧 helped someone. It would be proof that 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was attacking normal students. Same for snake hair. She was a younger girl, as she was smaller than him or 𝗧𝗑𝗧. If only you beat them with a quirk. That would have been easier to explain. Katsuki sighed as he knew the teacher would invent some bullshit to annoy the green bean, who seemed uncomfortable. His feet did the thing when he had something to hide. Note to self, kick 𝗧𝗑𝗧 in the face later to have the full story on that later. Let's prioritize for now. If they found it was 𝗧𝗑𝗧 who was responsible, it would be bad. Deku's idea to hide them was not bad, but if they did that, the bullies would wake up and cry to the teacher. A small smile appeared on Katsuki's face. Well, I guess the solution is even more violence, he said as the explosion came through his hand as he punched the two extras down in the face. Hard, several times each. Now, if the teachers want to have a word with shitty green hair and you, snake hair, they will also have to punish me. You don't fear that they will punish you. Also, that's quirkist, asshole. Ophidia responded, as some of her hair hissed at the angry blonde boy, who flipped the bird. I have done worse and gotten praise for it. Also, I say that to everyone, not just you, snake hair. The sad thing is that he's right. And don't worry about him. He's bad with names and things like that. Also, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 pointed to the two cringing boys on the ground. They will say that Katsuki beat them down, saying it was me or you would destroy their rep, while letting Kaken take credit. You take too long to explain. Basically, they are bitches, and they'll suck it up. So either they try to say Deku did it alone, but the burn will give away I was here. Not to mention I'm going to tell people I beat them like bitches, Katsuki said, having found a foolproof plan to protect the two others. Kaken, language. Otherwise, I'll tell Auntie. The green-haired boy warned his friend. Deku, do that and I tell Auntie you broke arms. Katsuki threatened back with a somehow proud smile, as if approving. They aren't broken, just dislocated. Izuku tried to justify himself, failing to understand he was just digging his tomb. That is darn cool. Damn it. Katsuki found that even cooler. Wait, was it bad or good? Izuku was quite in a conundrum, muttering more than usual his process of thought, which wore on the already thin nerves of his friend. Are you a friend or what? Asked the young bystander, feeling almost like an intruder between the both of them, despite being the first at the scene, being, the victim. Yes, no, said at the same time the two boys, who then glared at each other. Boys are weird, concluded Ophidia while letting the two aspiring heroes argue with each other about their friendship. However, their plan was not perfect. While Ophidia was indeed off the hook, many people stared at Izuku and Katsuki, all while the green bean was trying to calm his nerves with his card tricks in his hands. Katsuki was still trying to understand how he could make them dance just like that in his fingers. Well, while he tried to understand that, the word had passed. Katsuki was not cool anymore with bullying Izuku. Sure, no teacher was after them, but Katsuki could feel all his privileges being revoked one by one. No more missing classes, his teachers warned. It annoyed him a bit, but somehow, Katsuki felt it was worth it. They were all extras, and it was his last year here. Also, now that Izuku was less spineless, he was almost worth being a sidekick. His sidekick. He just needed a few more pushes, and he also owed Katsuki a few explanations, too. As for Izuku, well, he was eyed differently, not with fear, as the two first extra downplayed their defeat by saying it was Katsuki who beat them. However, Katsuki was more feared than loved, and if Izuku was his friend, then he was a weak point, too. The angry Pomeranian knew that, as it was one of his reasons to distance himself from Izuku with the others. Now, Izuku would have to watch his back. I will not protect you, Katsuki said as they went back home together. For the first time in years, you need to get them off your back, by yourself. You are making them not attack me by being here, So, that is how you see yourself. As my sidekick, helping me, but under my protection. Katsuki replied to him, but it was a turning point. By winning against those two dumbasses alone, Izuku was not useless. His analyses were always on point, and now he knew how to defend himself a bit. In short, Katsuki will let him be his sidekick. However, he had to listen to Deku saying so much he wanted to be a hero, not a sidekick, that he wanted the green bean to say it himself. His point for once got across Izuku. Under his hair, the young man thought a lot. His quirk was impractical, for now, and somehow he felt something. If he said yes, right here, right now, Kaken would protect him. Izuku would help him, without a doubt, to be the next Endgame. Izuku could be the next Night Eye. That was his first dream when Katsuki got his quirk after all. But a little voice in the back of his mind made him remember the discussion with Mr. 𝗵𝗲. What kind of hero did he want to be? Did he want to be just a sidekick? While they walked back home, Izuku knew his choice, here and now, would shape him. No, I want to stand by myself, said Izuku with more pride than he had the day before, invigorated by his fight. Katsuki stopped in an instant, before groaning, preparing for an explosion to make his point across, when Izuku continued. You are right. I can't continue to just say I want to be a hero doing nothing. The blonde boy did not expect that, and for once, he let his friend speak, his sparks disappearing. Is that why you were that angry at me? Asked Izuku, as his friend 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗍 at his friend, avoiding his stare. Saying that Katsuki had trouble making his point come across as saying that the water was wet, and it was also somehow amusing that someone so direct was sometimes so ambiguous. Try to guess, Deku. It made Izuku think more. He then smiled at his friend with that damn smile, his big sunny smile. One reason he would have liked to have him at his side. Thank you, Kaken. Don't worry, I'll get them off my back. Alone, I mean. Without a quirk. That is going to be fun. Katsuki snarked a bit, but his smile showed he thought Izuku could do that when he wanted to. Deku was quite scary, and Katsuki knew how he could be feared enough that no one would mess with him. It was then that he saw Izuku squirm a bit, and Katsuki pinched the bridge of his nose. 𝗔𝗂𝗧𝗏, he groaned, an explosion appearing in his free hand. I only got it recently, and if I use it too much, it can really hurt my brain. Izuku spilled out to his friend, who then stopped his explosions and thought about it. Izuku would never lie about something that was important to him. Hell, Katsuki helped him when they were young to put him in a dangerous situation so he could awaken his quirk. If Izuku said he had a quirk but it hurt his brain, then it was most likely true. You have to use cards to use it, I guess. That is why you keep playing with them. Bakugo speculated a bit, as you could say whatever you wanted about his temper, but Bakugo was at the top of the class with Izuku for a good reason. He was not dumb and could connect dots when he saw them. Especially now he had figured the missing part of a puzzle bothering him for a few months now. I can summon what they print on cards, but it destroys them, and since I developed it very late, it can hurt me if I use it too much. So, you can summon an endeavor with your cards. That would knock me out and I would need medical attention. Izuku did not deny the possibility of Katsuki's frustration. Fuck, that'd be pretty useful if you kept training it. That is why your stepdad teaches you to fight without quirk, so you don't die. Wait, Izuku said, then trailed off, not wanting to think about such a possibility yet, especially knowing the secret identity of Atsuhiro. Deku, my mom is preparing designs for your mom's wedding dress when that will happen and he comes to see auntie with flowers. Bakugo had a point and his face showed he had no fucks to give about his friend's sensibilities. His friend, who needed a reboot that Katsuki applied by hitting the back of his head, as Izuku noticed something else. Wait, you know he teaches me how to fight quirkless? Izuku, your mom told my mother that you had a teacher. I saw you with him. And I know when someone throws a good punch. You never learned to do it before, so he taught you. I don't punch. Izuku tried to tell what he did. Still super damn cool. You saw how his arm was limp. I'm surprised you had the guts to do that. Katsuki thought he couldn't be surprised anymore. He thought that Izuku would almost vomit when realizing what he did. Instead, he had an Izuku who laughed. A lot. With a tiny part of nervosity, the exploding boy asked, "You are all right?" Katsuki, my teacher's idea of breaking my idea of not hurting others had been to disjoint my bone and borderline torture. I also learned he knew French because he made a terrible pun with it in the Deku nickname you gave me. What? A reasonable reaction. You are called Deku. That is perfect, because 𝐒𝐻𝗵𝗲 said a flat-faced Izuku. I'm going to take that one just for the reference, laughed Katsuki, after understanding the joke and being able to appreciate that kind of violent humor. Kaken, well, still, to go back to what we were saying. I want to be a hero and I understand why my teacher told me I had 1 month to make them scared straight. I think he thought violence was my solution, but we both know that. Teachers are going to bitch about it and those extras will never fight you with less than 3 people. If I understand correctly, you only won because you had that surprise kick in. Izuku nodded. Kaken was good in a fight and in analyzing one. It was a good idea. It is going to be fun. Because I know a way to terrify all the extras. But you will not tell me because you want me to suffer. Deadpanned Izuku, looking at his friend who had this smug smile. Seeing Katsuki less angry and smiling at him just like old times. Well, it was nice. Nice to see he could be trusted, if only a bit. Katsuki being delicate was not possible according to the law of the universe. Izuku would settle for his childhood friend. Not being an asshole. He still surprised Katsuki a bit with his knowing smile. That isn't a problem. I know someone who can teach me how to scare people straight. So that is why you're asking me, to teach you how to scare people. 𝗵𝗲 was pinching the bridge of his nose while Izuku told him about his school situation. At least the kid's standing up for himself. The older man-child thought. It proved he wasn't an NPC. More like a character he wanted for his team, with the proper effort. 𝗵𝗲, you are in the top 3 of the scariest people I know. It includes actual supervillains like Moonfish, said Izuku semi-seriously, who was pretty conscious that his sort of friend wasn't the nicest guy around, though he was a lot of fun and a skillful player. It's nice to know that I'm on par with a freaking cannibal with only my smile, 𝗵𝗲 said as he chuckled, amused by the fact Izuku did not know his past or his plans. You know what? Beat me once today and I will help you work on it. Deal? The trick here is that in all the time they knew each other and the dozens of games they've played, Izuku won only 2 times, mostly by luck and the fact that 𝗵𝗲 used handicaps. That's fine by me, said Izuku with his usual smile. Said it was his day off training. Mr. 𝗵𝗲 said that too much training was a thing and seeing people would help him have more confidence. It was quite true. Staying over one afternoon playing with a 𝗵𝗲 glaring and smiling at you was an exceptional training to ignore his fear. Izuku was good at judging character and knew more about 𝗵𝗲 than what he let slip. For starters, 𝗵𝗲's habit of keeping a pinky on his card was a sign that his quirk was a 5-point activation one that's annoying or powerful. Second thing, 𝗵𝗲 was a rich sheltered kid with a nanny. He deduced that purely from his clothes and his spending habits. Izuku had to tell him it was not normal to buy over 4,000 yen's worth of cards each week. Hell, most people couldn't afford that budget as a monthly one. Third, his nanny and his parents sheltered him and lived in their own world. Seriously. Otherwise, they would have made him clean his act and his appearance way earlier. Were they blind? Fourth, 𝗵𝗲 thought he had everything he needed and did not go outside shopping. Fifth, while smarter and more intelligent than most people credited him for, 𝗵𝗲 primarily sought fun. Sixth, he was way too prideful. Seventh and last point, I swear, 𝗵𝗲 did not play well when he got emotional. So, at first, 𝗵𝗲 was, well, winning, as usual. He refined his tactics against Izuku, who did not have the same money as him to improve his deck drastically. So, while he knew that theoretically, Izuku could manage a win, 𝗵𝗲 knew it was more of an error on his part than anything else. If a secondary character wanted his help for his side quest, he better had to win his approval and prove that he was useful. As of now, well, Izuku was fun. He was not dumb too, being able to understand 𝗵𝗲 when he spoke video games. He also advised 𝗵𝗲 a few times on old video games. However, despite 𝐒𝐽𝐽 putting up a valiant fight with his vigilante deck, one of the few capable of denting his villain deck around 𝗧𝗏, 𝗵𝗲 knew he almost finished his win conditions for his final combo. All he needed was a last card. That was at that moment, however, that 𝗧𝗏 truly attacked. "Oh, that made me think, 𝗵𝗲. I have a gift for you," said 𝗧𝗏 with his big, gentle, innocent smile. 𝗵𝗲 could tank it, being, well, 𝗵𝗲, but was not prepared when 𝗧𝗏 pulled something from his backpack. It was gloves. Why was it missing 3 fingers? NPC. The fuck is that? Artist gloves. Just, believe me, okay. Put them on. Half thinking of dusting 𝗧𝗏 if it was as dumb as 𝗵𝗲 thought, he did it. 𝗧𝗏 was too. Well, 𝗧𝗏, to be a danger. At most, he was an idiot. Now, 𝗵𝗲 had equipped the strange gloves. He looked with blood in his eyes 𝗧𝗏, who grabbed his hand in his own with his innocent smile. Shit, 𝗵𝗲 was only half serious about dusting the kid. He had to make it stop before. 𝗵𝗲 looked at 𝗧𝗏's hand, which did not decay. 𝗧𝗏 was fine and smiling. "See, I'm fine," told the young hero to the aspiring villain. "You know about my quirk." 𝗵𝗲 never told him for obvious reasons, as his quirk was deadly as hell. Most people would categorize him as a villain and not think twice about it. That it is most likely a 5-point touch-activated quirk and certainly a destructive one. Easily, but it seemed rude to ask you about it. "Can you stop grabbing my hand and explain, 𝗧𝗏?" said 𝗵𝗲, as 𝗧𝗏 was still hand-to-hand with him. Not that he didn't reassure him about. Wait, was he caring about someone else's well-being? Definitely not. He just did not want to be kicked out of his favorite store for accidental death. Yes, definitely that. Still, 𝗧𝗏, like a good follower who entered forcefully his party, explained, "Those are artist gloves. If just one finger is covered, you don't risk activating by mistake your quirk. It seems like you can't deactivate your quirk, so if you use that, you don't have to worry about it. 𝗧𝗏, you know you could have just given me that to max my affection and I would have trained you in the way of villainy," stated 𝗵𝗲 seriously, while testing the effectiveness of 𝗧𝗏's gift by grabbing with all his 5 fingers a card. 𝗧𝗏 did not stop to smile. Also, the blue-haired villain couldn't stop thinking about it. How the hell did 𝗧𝗏 deduce all that? "No, that isn't the same," said the young man, while playing his turn. And 𝗵𝗲 distractedly answered in kind. "It has to be fair, not a bribe." Playing mind games was fair in 𝗧𝗏's book. Somewhere, as Mr. 𝗵𝗲 was stealing incriminating documents from a corrupt CEO, he also felt pride in his heart. He knew 𝗧𝗏 made his first step in the way of craziness, missing 3 turns by being able to hold things for the first time in his life without having to worry about dusting them proved to be fatal for the game. As in 𝗧𝗏 summoning his Eraserhead on the field, neutralizing his boss and killing him by doing a nasty crawler celebrity combo. An excessively hard-to-do combo that 𝗧𝗏 barely did because he was too disturbed. 𝗵𝗲 stared nastily at 𝗧𝗏 before doing his creepy smile, except 𝗧𝗏 could, somehow, feel a sense of pride in it. "𝗧𝗏, why do you even need my help?" "What? You guessed my weakness. You made a plan to work with it, then executed it with a freaking smile on your face. If you wanted to be a feared villain, all you needed to do was do it while explaining it clearly. Like, no muttering. Speak up clearly," explained 𝗵𝗲 calmly. "There isn't a thing scarier than a high-level player explaining to you your weaknesses while acting on them and you know you can't do anything to stop him. Even worse, if he's really good at it, you also understand he can do that whenever he wants." 𝗧𝗏 tilted his head adorably with his puppy eyes. "But people find my muttering creepy, not scary, because they can't understand the things you deduced from them. Hell, just for fun. What do you know about me?" Tamura Shigaraki, around 20 years old, homeschooled, very sheltered, somehow have access to video games older than both of us, from the pre-quirk era. His guardian must be some kind of really rich nerd. Somewhere, AFO somehow felt like someone dissed him. Oh well, time to rewatch Star Wars. Episode IV of course, has a rich guardian and a nanny. Has been mistreated by the hero system. Very smart, but I feel like he isn't as educated as he should be. Does not have many friends aside from me and no girlfriend. He uses shampoo made locally around the Camino ward. Excellent one, but since he doesn't care about his face, it's probably his guardian who has some great taste. Somewhere, Kurogiri nodded. Okay, stop right there. You deduced that in how much time? Tamura was dumbfounded. 10 minutes, said a sheepish 𝗧𝗏. Wasn't it good enough? Holy crap. 𝗧𝗏 was a high-potential secondary character. A heroic one, but what did Sensei say? The best kind of help a hero can bring you is the help he doesn't know he gave to a villain. As a bonus, you can always corrupt him later when you reveal to him how your plan couldn't have worked without him. Tamura smiled. Yes, the plan was foolproof. He was going to get a second strategist on his team and it would be 𝗧𝗏. Nothing could go wrong with that plan. Everything went wrong with that plan. how to avoid death but also to get a date. Flowers, check. Suit, check. Having made sure that a clone of Mr. Compress will be seen in Hokkaido. Check 2. Hey, he was a professional. Atsuhiro made a training plan for Izuku and sent him more than one video so the young boy could train while he was away. He also taught that Katsuki boy how to chase Izuku around to make him faster at running and avoiding attacks. The exploding blonde was astonishingly good at the job and Mr. Compress was thinking of doing that permanently. Still, he had to throw some fake trails for all the heroes chasing him around. And more than a few villains too. Now, he had to prepare for something he both looked for and dreaded. The evening at Midoriya's house. 𝗏𝐻 said he had to come to their home for dinner twice a week. She said that with that voice that could chill your bones to the core. The voice of the nurse who needed to make the patient listen to her. The voice of an ice queen domineering people. Somehow, Atsuhiro still loved when she spoke to him like that, because it meant she still cared for him. People seemed to see just a chubby woman who was a kind nurse and seemed to be an angel too good for this world. Atsuhiro had a different opinion. She was only threatening when she cared, be it for her son or him. She threatened you when it was important and maybe it was her way of caring for him. At least, he hoped. He was the first to admit that his eating habits were not the best during the last decade. He kept traveling and had little time to cook. However, he was pretty sure he was as fit as possible, thanks to his work, too. Atsuhiro hoped that his body was good enough for her, as he knew that otherwise, he was pretty plain. It had helped him a lot to escape the police. But still, it was annoying and worrying to him. Now all he had to do was to ring the door and not screw up the meal. It was going to be fine. He did that more than a few times already. Sure, the first time it was awkward. He had to create a fake story about how he was a trainer for a few athletes and had to travel the country to meet his different clients. Atsuhiro couldn't tell her he was one of the few S-rank villain and the only one that still had a secret identity. Mainly because, unlike the others, he was extremely careful with it and Izuku only deduced it because he knew the right thing and 𝗏𝐻 told the good thing, too. He just had to continue as the other time with his dear chubby friend he had not a crush on. Just a delightful meal with her and her son. So, our dear favorite magician was inspired and rang at the door. Soon after, 𝗏𝐻, with the sunniest smile he had ever seen, opened the door for him. Apron and everything. Like every other time. She was still the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Hey, yes, she was chubby. It just means there was more of her to love. Also, it was truly worth it to not work for a better world that evening, because that smile, simply by existing, made the world a better place. Atsuhiro, finally here. Come inside, it will be better than outside. He nodded before eagerly entering and appreciating the small house. It was not much. Hisashi died and left some money behind, but not much. 𝗏𝐻 did not finish university and could not become a doctor. She could take an exam to get a true license, but with Izuku to take care of, she simply did not have the time for it, which was, in Atsuhiro's mind, a waste. 𝗏𝐻 was excellent as a nurse, but she would have been an amazing doctor for all. Certainly, a better one than the quack that told her Izuku was quirkless. Note to self, making up a story so he could help financially 𝗏𝐻 and help her become a doctor. A small voice in his mind told him to directly do the straightforward solution. Finally, tell her your feelings and become her new husband. If you're with her, there would be no need to invent an excuse to make a joint account. Mr. Compress shut that voice down. Instead, he put a smile on his face and, for once, took back his mental mask of Mr. Compress. This evening, he was just Atsuhiro Sako, the childhood friend. Still, it was nice to be in the house. However, he noticed something quickly. Izuku isn't there. I mean, unless he has homework, but I thought. Atsuhiro was pretty much certain of it. 𝗏𝑗 𝗏𝐻 𝗏𝑗. Izuku had to keep his grade high despite the workout if he wanted to enter the school of his dream. No, he's over at Mitsuki's house. Katsuki and he are now better friends than before. Did you know that he somehow got into trouble yesterday? Said 𝗏𝐻, who giggled a bit when remembering what happened. Atsuhiro was now curious and had to ask. He knew what happened and was curious why 𝗏𝐻 was just smiling and not low-key, threatening to pull his eyes out with her quirk. How so? I guess it was not violent, since you're happy. Oh no, there was a violent incident last Friday. He and Bakugo put down some bullies and Izuku dislocated some arms. The staff was angry, but since their star pupil was also implicated and on my son's side, they called Mitsuki and me to take them home, as both of them were suspended for a week. Nothing on their record, though. Atsuhiro smirked. That was a good idea to have someone more popular break the rule. It also meant he was finally making Izuku crazier, in a good way. However, 𝗏𝐻's smile was a bit less happy. So what did they call you for? He had to know exactly what Izuku did. Did he break too many bullies? No, he was not that strong yet. Atsuhiro hoped he had been smart enough to get the drop on them one by one if he beat bullies up. He terrorized all the students of his age. What? Also, why was she smiling with so much pride and joy? He enlisted the help of Bakugo in exchange for some favors. He did not tell me what exactly, and broke into the control room and took control of the intercom. Katsuki, what did that person do to want to do that? He insulted my mom. Katsuki, it is Call of Duty. That is, are you saying you're going back on what you promised? Izuku grumbled as he proceeded to use some admin command to identify the IP of a player on a forum before banning him from a community that he and Kaken were part of and renaming him from Toxic Cloud 666 to I Love Anime Girls, with the appropriate picture because Izuku was nothing if thorough. It quite surprised a certain student with a gas quirk when everyone laughed at his pseudo. And why did someone put some wild pussycat as his picture? I can see why he got punished, but not why that terrified people. Then he explained everyone's quirks and weaknesses and a few very personal things. Very personal. He was not supposed to know everything, he said. And now everyone thinks Izuku has a murder plan for everyone at school. They just don't have proof. And that is what Sato did sad instead of studying with a friend like he told his mother, Sakura. By the way, it is quite sad as her cookies are delicious. Not to mention that the school Sato wants to go to because he likes Hinata from the other classroom and she will most likely go there. Well, that school has an emphasis on math and he needs the tutoring. However, since Hinata is crushing on Katsuki. By the way, I don't know why she would do that. Fuck you Deku. Atsuhiro was stunned and proud. He asked him to scare a few bullies. Not his entire school. Inko finally looked at him with that scary smile while he felt a pull on his necktie. Now, can you tell me why, when I was alone with him at home, he told me it was his homework? I told him to scare only his bullies. Not everyone. Atsuhiro. He did that for 3 hours. The teacher stopped him when he was only in the middle of analyzing his teacher. Now, Atsuhiro was just proud. That was his student. So, nerd, why did you scare the complete school? Asked Bakugo, still wondering what the hell happened that day. He just thought that Izuku would blackmail people. However, he loved what Izuku did. He was also preparing against his friend his favorite endeavor Endgame USSR extermination murder explosion combo against his friend. Remember Yue's motto. As Izuku innocently played a midnight on the field, delaying the turn and forcing Bakugo to grumble as he couldn't play the ultimate turn yet, he could finally summon his Death Incarnate card on the field. Plus Ultra. At least the game will finish soon. Wait, what was the card Izuku sneaked on the field? Eraserhead. Plus Ultra, said Izuku as he exterminated Bakugo's field with a smile and took Katsuki's last life point with a Nenzu. He had to troll him, who was on the verge of being more Katsuki than usual during this evening. Neat. Also, stop spamming 𝐅𝐴𝐶RHEAD. The most explosive boy on the block flipped the board upside down. Never Izuku screeched as he cackled, as it was Kaken's way of losing against him, interrupting the game, and said he did not lose. However, since Izuku was weaker than him, he had to give him his dessert that evening so he could grow stronger. That it was the same dessert he bet with his friend before the game had nothing to do with his action. He did that a lot as he won one more time against Bakugo, as they just did a few rounds on his console on Mortal Kombat CI. Yes, Izuku lost and they switched because Katsuki thought he could beat Deku in any game. Currently, Izuku showed him why he was not even close to his league. It was also pleasant for once to not play against someone with an insane strategy and deck like Tamura. Mitsuki and her husband smiled as they listened to the two boys playing loudly above. It was better like that. Also, they could bet on this evening's outcome quietly. You get to live another day, Atsuhiro, said Inko, as she put his necktie on his suit. Hey, he did know how to dress up nicely. Still, I feel sorry to make you come here so often. I mean, maybe your girlfriend is upset about it, asked kindly Inko, with a pure smile and certainly no afterthought. Oh no, don't worry, I'm not with anyone, said Atsuhiro almost immediately and without a second thought as he walked towards the living room, missing an Inko who did a victory pose. She then joined him, as she pulled toward them 2 glasses and a bottle of red wine. You mean no girl has seduced you? That or maybe. No man. Hey, you had to be sure before finding a wonderful father figure for your son and to be sure she did not misremember some of her past and how Atsuhiro seemed to act around her. How he always came around for dinner. This made Atsuhiro laugh, still thinking he had no chance in hell to seduce Inko, as she poured wine so they could drink together, perfectly purring as he answered. Oh no, I simply don't have time, and nobody had the right chemistry, you know. I don't have many friends. Those at work, they're mainly men. Hard to tell that his closest friends were a trans woman who's still looking for the right doctor for her therapy, a strange cloud barman, a man without a nose who killed people not worthy of being a hero, and that nice old man who made the best tea in the town. Oh, and technically Nedzu could count, but it was mostly someone he liked to work with more than a friend, though he trusted the stoat to a certain extent. Said knowingly Inko, perfectly purring at the news she did not have any competition on the market. She couldn't remember why she did not go on a proper date with Atsuhiro when they were younger. Yes, she met Hisashi, but honestly, Atsuhiro was kinder and still the man who loved to read pre-quirk literature just like her. Thought for another time. She was going to enjoy that evening. Mitsuki helped her with it, after all. Yes, the stylist was right about what she wanted, and she had a good plan to help her advance her cause. Now, Atsuhiro did not know it yet, but she trapped him in her web. They enjoyed a very nice evening. Nothing saucy or torrid. Just a delightful meal between two adults, catching up on time spent apart, without having to worry about a certain kid. It also allowed them to make plans for a date together on the weekend, for a little shopping. Just as a friend, Mr. 𝗵𝗲 thought naively. Or was it he did not dare to hope for more? Oh well, it was 𝐭𝐸's job now. Izuku was also quite happy to see his mother finally having someone other than him or the 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 making her smile. Especially a smile he couldn't see her have. It was clear as the days passed that Mr. Sako, or rather Atsuhiro, as she loved to call him, was more than welcome in their home. She was preparing special dishes when he came over, and she always found an excuse now and then so he would sleep on the sofa at home. And sometimes he would just stay the Saturday while Izuku went out. As Katsuki said, it was quite obvious that the two were in love and that 𝗏𝗏 was gradually wearing Mr. Atsuhiro down. The Green Bean tried to not think a lot that his future stepdad was also an S-rank villain, vigilante. He just hoped that somehow the Yua wouldn't catch on to that. However, he had to remember to fake his surprise when her mom told him she went out with his trainer, and that he was most probably going to sleep at home more often from now. The months went on. Izuku continued his training, becoming sufficiently nimble that Mr. 𝗵𝗲 was proud of the result. Izuku also got a better grip on his quirk. The tarot deck was a good idea, as it gave the young boy a cheap and cost-effective way to use his power. He could even reasonably use some of the higher cards if he was careful of their use. Still, powerful heroes were a no, as his new dad was rather cautious to not kill his stepson by mistake. Sure, 𝗏𝗏 and he were not married. However, it was now easier to count the days when he was not at home rather than the contrary. He still gets some heists by traveling, sometimes for a week, too. Still, Izuku was, sometimes, thought that being attacked by the sludge villain was the best thing that happened in his life. Sure, the training was hard and there had been over one evening where he couldn't move at all once he slumped onto his bed. Sure, Katsuki was still yelling at him and exploding. But it was Katsuki. If he was one day calm, Izuku would freak out and instantly know that something was wrong. It was normal, and he and Kaken had a more friendly rivalry than before, especially since they talked about, well, everything. Kaken apologized by not apologizing like he was used to. Sure, Tamura was. Well, Tamura. It was creepy. He had rants that could go on and on about why he hated heroes. Izuku liked the discussion he had with him. It made him think. When he told the reason he had to defend himself at school, Tamura simply nodded. Many people would have outright denied the bullying existed. Tamura accepted it was part of the darker part of the society. It was, however, reciprocated by Izuku, who pointed out to Tamura how often villains made little sense. He was happy when Tamura asked how, according to Izuku, a villain had to be. A second identity, a costume, minions. It was fun for Izuku to think about it. Oh, and let's not forget Tamura's second reaction when he learned of Izuku's past, asking names so he could have a friendly chat with the bullies. Somehow, it was like having an older cousin. When most of the teachers in Aldera Middle School found their car properly dusted, no one dared to call the police. All they could say when people asked, in private, was the fact that the culprit had the creepiest smile they had ever seen. They were not crossing that. Tamura would deny it was because he appreciated Izuku and he was angry people would try to hurt his future teammate. Sure, it was an excellent backstory for a villain. Still, as a future leader, he had to protect and avenge his party if necessary. He was simply doing it preemptively. Not because Izuku was like that annoying younger sibling that could call on your bullshit, but most importantly, Izuku had an idol who made sure he could realize his dream of being a hero and trained him for the exam. So life was pretty fun and awesome now. He understood why Atsuhiro told him sanity was just something limiting people's true potential. Like that time when Atsuhiro showed him how you could dislocate your body to get the cuff off your hands. Sure, it hurt, but it was effective. In the same way, Atsuhiro showed how he could often transform himself into marble to be slingshot into a museum or some secure place. Crazy. Yes. Effective. Oh yes, that was the reason he was learning even more about obscure heroes. Using weaker heroes but with special power was a good idea to play with the strength limitation quirk. Sure, summoning an endeavor would probably be too much. Using the psychic burn-in. It was still hard, but possible. Did he want to open a path? Sure, using a strength hero could be the solution. Using a hero who could just create a ladder or a way to go around the obstacle was less tiring. Izuku was happy, confident even. He was still, however, according to both Tamura and Katsuki, a nerd who was way too excited for his good. Katsuki feared the day Izuku would discover coffee, mainly because if Katsuki had anything to say, He would only allow this in a doomsday scenario where they would need the craziest idea. Then came the day. The exam. Oi, get ready you damn nerd. The explosion was loud enough to almost shatter the windows. It was certainly loud enough that Atsuhiro woke up and made sure to not wake 𝐭, who was still snoozing happily. He then took one of his marbles that he kept for a rainy day and launched it on Bakugo. Then he returned to cuddle. When Izuku finally got outside, the sun was still rising. Katsuki had a good idea to go to the UA with hours and spare. Then the green bean looked at Katsuki, who was stunned. He was not moving, livid and incapable of moving. That was probably because he had an octopus on his face. Who would have guessed he would see that this morning? Even if it was the third time, it was still hilarious to see what his stepfather would throw in the morning at Katsuki. Kaken, Atsuhiro told you he disliked being woken up in the morning. I'm still going to make you fatherless again after the exam, Izuku. Again, Hisashi couldn't see it. But about 300 meters from him, a determined and angry Katsuki watched Izuku crying as his bastard father was leaving. Katsuki took his favorite marble, given to him by his best quirkless friend, one of his only friends who never gave him shit for not being able to see faces. 𝗂𝗧𝗵𝗲 was a bitch. He took the marble and launched it with his quirk, yelling, "Die." You heard nothing, Katsuki stated seriously. Though he researched a bit about his good deed and knew there wasn't no warrant out for the death of that bastard, so he was safe. Hey, he was angry and impulsive. Not an idiot. I knew you cared, quipped an Izuku, who did not believe his friend had a hand in his father's death. His dominant theory was still his mother or Atsuhiro. Despite yelling a lot, Izuku, get ready to meet your biological father before the exam, Katsuki warned jokingly, happy to have avoided this particular threat. Still, Izuku was way more confident than at the beginning of the year. Nah, not even you're that cruel. You're lucky, Kaken. I'm adorable. Also, let me take off the octopus, said Izuku with his trademark smile, as Katsuki led him begrudgingly. You are lucky I need to present properly for the exam. Otherwise, I would have cooked that octopus myself. Also, your stepdad's quirk is bullshit. No, it's random bullshit. Yes, the cover for Atsuhiro's quirk in public with the Bakugas was random bullshit. The ability to throw random things. It was various marbles containing random things, including an octopus, apparently. The blonde thought the power was an idiot when he got a newspaper for the first time. Now, it was less funny, indeed. This school is huge. Izuku was way too hyped, but Kaken could understand. Even he was flipping excitedly as they grabbed their number of entries for the exam. Hey, nerd, Katsuki said in an uncharacteristically calm tone. Despite hearing it several times at that point, it never failed to unnerve Izuku. Yes, Kaken, if you don't pass, I'm going to make you an astronaut. What? A logical reaction to being fair. I'm going to launch you into space with my explosion, Katsuki said calmly, as both went towards the hall. Don't worry, nothing wrong can happen to me, said Izuku. Sadly, this is one of the most dangerous things to say. Therefore, he tripped on his own feet, to Katsuki's incredulity. Seriously, how? However, luckily, a certain girl saved him. Yes, we all know the scene. Before you ask, no. Izuku was not that confident, yet he could answer Uraraka's positivity with anything other than him being red and thinking he somehow talked to a girl. Katsuki must have the power to read his mind as he shouted, "You know you said nothing to round face." The blonde boy was smug as he could see Izuku turning redder as a cherry. Sure, he had trouble seeing faces, but he could still see skin tone, and in his opinion, it was pretty fucking hilarious when the nerd turned red. Shut up, Kaken, Izuku squeaked out weakly as he was way too embarrassed. They then went on to the room where they would take the written test. To bluff or not to bluff? That is the question. Izuku knew he got the written test rather nicely. Most questions had tricks, sure, but nothing he couldn't do. Honestly, he knew most people would have trouble, but it was a good way to make people remember that UA was not only a hero school, but also a prestigious school with a business course and a support course. Even if you did not get into one of the 2 heroics classes, you could always be in Gen Ed or something. After his talk with Katsuki, Green Bean actually contemplated going into the support course as an analyst. However, he discovered it was an option for business or in second year in heroic. Not everyone had an analytical mind after all. Still, it had been a wonderful exercise and an excellent reminder that brain and brawn were required for a wonderful hero. Sure, a good quirk was important and often more useful, but as some international teams proved, having an analyst and a strategist was even more important. Everyone could remember the disaster that happened when the Russian team tried to apprehend the SS rank villain that conquered the North Pole. It had not been pretty. So many candy canes and so many heads. Let's think about something else. So, they were all sitting in an immense amphitheater, where President Mike presented the practical exam. Trying to relax himself a bit, Izuku took out his tarot deck and shuffled it. 1 year of daily and intensive practice made him very good at different card tricks. He also discovered that doing them calmed him a lot. playing with coins, too. Truth be told, as long as they were sleight of hand, it calmed him down. Sure, sometimes it looked like he was a show-off. Katsuki told him that a lot. However, it worked well, so why stop? Therefore, cards seemed to fly from one hand to another. There was a reason Tenko made sure someone else shuffled Izuku's deck every game or two. He couldn't prove it, but certain combos Izuku pulled were way too perfect. Nonetheless, 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝐻's presentation was quite interesting. 1, 2, 3 points robots. There was a fourth kind of robot, but if he was right, 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝐻 was going to present it when some tall idiot stood up and berated 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝐻. Excuse me, on the handout. There are clearly 4 types of villains listed. Such an error would be the height of embarrassment for a top-tier National Academy of UAS caliber. The reason we're here today is that we seek guidance on the path to becoming model heroes. Then, to Izuku's surprise, he then turned toward him. What did that guy was looking at him with such an intense look? Moreover, can't you sit still for a second? You're distracting the surrounding people. If you think UA is a school for silly tricks, you can go somewhere else. Izuku stayed silent for a second, before the result of rekindling his friendship with Bakugo and some training with Mr. Compress kicked him. Daily banter trained him with Katsuki, who had a tongue as wild and dangerous as his explosion, and someone who cracked a bunny joke to Maruko and made her smile before she tried to decapitate him. Well, at least we know what you can do if your quirk has problems. Izuku shot back quietly, as all cards seemingly magically came back in his hand. He was perfectly calm as he looked back at Ada. 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝐻 did nothing because he was a showman at heart and recognized a good roasting when it was coming. What? The tall glassy examinee was clearly not expecting Izuku to retort. Then again, what did he expect? Someone who was taking the UAS Hero Course exam and doesn't have any self-esteem. Izuku had little of it, but he was a master at faking it until he made it. Well, you can pull out the stick shoved up your ass and use it as a weapon against the different robots, said the green bean with a smile so pure and innocent that it made what he said even more effective than it should have been. Katsuki laughed at Izuku, who snapped. It was rare, but it was always funny. Thank God Atsuhiro taught him a few liners to improve his sass. Even 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝐻 snorted a bit. However, Izuku was not done. Also, if you were kind enough to let the teacher who is a pro hero finish, that would allow you to still appear smarter. Since the speed of light is faster than sound, you seemed intelligent before opening your mouth. Once again, with that big sunshine smile of his, Izuku finished his attack, leaving a thunderstruck Ida looking like an idiot in front of everyone. Though, to be fair, he brought it upon himself. While his language is quite foul, the green bean is right. Examinee 7111. I was going to address that point. The arena traps, also known as the 0-pointer. They don't bring points and you should run away from them. We made them to study your situational awareness, which was something Ada seemingly did not have, as he was redder than a tomato. Maybe his outburst was not his best idea, as he quietly sat back down and avoided eye contact. Nonetheless, all students went to the exam arena, an immense fake city. Well, cities to be fair. And Izuku sighed as they separated him and Kaken. Not of sadness to not be with his friend, but of happiness. He knew Katsuki's competitive streak, and Izuku knew that he would doubtless destroy pretty much every robot in his arena. Therefore, being not with him increased his odds significantly. Not that he was weak either, as he took 210 from his deck. Yes, his shuffling from earlier was not for nothing, either. Knowing where his cards were was essential for the exam. Still, our young magician saw round face, as Kaken called her. Sure, he could have actually flipped on his feet, but it had been nice that she helped him. He was about to approach her to wish her good luck. But then, I see, you're here to test this girl's concentration power. Oh 𝗏𝗏𝗄𝐻. No, I just wanted to wish her good luck since she helped me earlier. Dude, I know we're all stressed out, but stop thinking everyone is out for you. Otherwise, they will be. Deadpanned away too done with him Izuku. Ada did not know what to do or how to answer, since it was that particular moment that 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝐻 announced the start of the examination. The first to bolt was an Izuku who trained for 1 year with the paintball training. Atsuhiro did not give a countdown either for the same reason 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝐻 did. Life did not have one. Still, people were quite surprised by the speed Izuku showed. Once again, paintball training. It gave Izuku quite the speed to run away from his bloodthirsty mentor. Yes, he loved his stepfather. However, both agreed that during training, they wouldn't let love interfere. Some people might have wondered why Izuku threw the cards in his hand. Some were expecting an explosion. They definitely did not expect 2 pillar men rising up in front of Izuku and dismembering 3 1-pointers in front of him as if they were sheets of papers in a few seconds. And in perfect sync no less. What kind of random bullshit quirk is that? No, that is my dad's quirk, answered an Izuku who did not stop running, as others passed in front of him, such as the tall guy. Well, his motor legs were indeed quite useful for that. And Izuku knew he better start hunting down more robots. A smile appeared on his face. Izuku then ordered his card men to search and destroy robots. Go my pretties, destroy them all. Maybe Kaken was rubbing off him after all. Still, it was going to be fun. 𝗫𝗀 was not having fun. Robots. Freaking robots. How was he supposed to use his quirk to fight for robots? Then he saw a burly monster, white as the milk except for the heart on his face with a white 10 on it, who just ripped apart a one-pointer in front of him. Hey, that was my prey. Do not care. All for the master. Wait, did that thing, monster, answer him? Was it sentient to a small degree? A smile creeped on Purple Hair's face. He reached and used his quirk. The strange monster stood still for a second and 𝗫𝗀 ordered him, with a loud voice so the examiners could hear him, destroy all the robots. And the thing moved. Sweet. 𝗫𝗀 smiled, and he looked for the green-haired teen. Yes, they split students from the same school so they couldn't work together. However, it was possible for him to hijack a few summons of his. No. Izuku groaned. He felt when his card men disappeared. Other students destroyed some, making him summon a few others in replacement. He had lost one of the 10 in all cards from 2 to 6. What was strange was that one of his cards was still there. He could feel the strain. Moreover, he could feel it working differently from what he ordered. A hijacking quirk. That was very interesting, and Izuku hoped he would meet the guy who did that. However, it was still a strain for him. So, while Green Boy accepted to let the 10 alive to help the hijacker, hey, he could easily understand if the power did not work on robots, and with the no attacking fellow examinees rule, then that examinee was in trouble. So while he accepted that, he would not sabotage himself for this mysterious student. All hijacked cards except one disappeared. Izuku inhaled some fresh air, as a blonde guy winked at him before firing his laser at a robot who was going to attack on Izuku's blind side. Izuku answered by summoning a knight right behind and smashing a robot, who was silently creeping behind the twinkling student. Both gauged each other, before nodding and saying nothing else as they went in different directions. Izuku racked his brain as he hopped behind his knight. Yes, he was not summoning anyone else for now, as he rode on the large back of his summon who suspiciously looked like an armored knight from manga, closer to a mech than a human. Was there more to the exam than just points? Accidentally, Izuku did see it, but 𝗫𝗀 clearly used the summon he had left to destroy as many robots as he could. More often than not, he naturally did the smart thing, to not let his slave get destroyed. He picked almost destroyed or trapped robots. One kid with purple balls on his head was actually yelling, as 𝗫𝗀 destroyed the 5th robot he had trapped. In the control room, teachers were looking happily at the situation. Eraserhead was the one to point out 𝗫𝗀's hijacking. He knew firsthand how the exam was discriminatory against people like them, so that the kid turned back the situation was something he wouldn't let ignored. It was rational to reward being smart. However, it was time to spice the game. They let the 0-pointers out. Bets switched between hands. It was time for fun. And before people asked, they actually unleashed them because they had on hand a janitor with the particular quirk of warping everyone on the verge of being hit by a very tall robot to safety. It was an incredibly specific quirk, and 𝗫𝗀 actually had to find it in Poland. With over 5 billion people, yes, you were bound to find incredibly specific quirks. Still, they were not irresponsible. The loser would also have to write the name of the janitor, 𝗓𝗏𝗄𝗄𝗏𝗄𝗏𝗄𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 this is a 0-pointer, said an Izuku who was way too close to be actually safe from the death robot of doom in front of him. Seriously, where did the UA found the budget for those? Nedzu was meanwhile looking at his benefits from owning part in different stock companies, including some owned by the sentient animals of the Amazonian fauna. Yep, still rich. Still, Izuku was counting on his points as his knight yeeted him outside of the 0-pointer trajectory. It was time to fold it and stay back and relax. With an uncanny grace, Izuku landed on his feet. He was right. He was at roughly 40 points. It was quite nice. With his written test, Izuku was clearly in the good place to be put in heroics. Still, he was happy to see he was not the only one out of the way of the robots. He actually landed near an exhausted round face. Hey, hello there. Happy to see you. Everything went well on your side? He asked, this time way chillier than at the entrance, mainly because he was quite sure to get into Yua. The girl answered by rising a thumb toward him, still too tired to do anything else. She almost went under some rocks, but a purple-haired dude got her out before anything dangerous happened or she hurt herself. So all in all, she was fine. Please someone, help. Izuku stopped everything that he was doing to see who asked for help, while running, without even thinking about it while his knight just valiantly died to slow less than a second the 0-pointer. It took 10 seconds to see who asked for help. He would have missed the girl who yelled for help if she did not yell again. Why? Simply because she was invisible. Well, she had a uniform. And it was funny to see a floating uniform who clearly had nice curves, but it was not the time to think about that. Also, Izuku groaned when he saw the 0-pointer going toward them. Because, of course, the thing targeted students. Of course, he ran even faster. Meanwhile, a young Toru was not believing her eyes. She did great on the exam. Written test. It went as well as she hoped. Good, but not enough. She could completely rely on it. At first, the practical exam looked like it would be her death, but she found a weak point in the robot's armor. So, she took her courage and a heavy lead pipe and ambushed as many robots as she could, especially if other students were in danger. It was an exam, but still, people could get hurt, and it was her time to shine. Except it went all sideways when the giant robot appeared. At first, she thought she was safe, unless she tripped. Yes, she tripped and then some rubble almost crushed her leg. Almost. Still, she was trapped and all she could do was yell for help. Except she knew she wouldn't get it. Toru was invisible. Even if someone hurt her, who would see the invisible girl? She could almost cry as she knew her rescues were probably not seen by anyone. She cried when she knew that maybe the teachers would miss her being crushed. She did not want to go out like this. She was still young. She still had so much to do, like hang out with friends and meet with cute boys. Maybe, just maybe, the teachers would save her. So, everyone, time to bet. Will the boy try to save the girl? Run away. Destroy the 0-pointer. Time to place your bet. Let it be known that 𝗵𝗃𝗂𝐵 put her bet in half as a joke and half because she was a romantic on the last option. She was the only one, as all the other teachers grinned. Aizawa put his bet on running away, as the boy seemed smart and would know when to run. All Might of course put him on trying to save the girl, but the green kid did not have the firepower to destroy a 0-pointer. Don't worry, I am here, said an Izuku with his best impersonation of All Might, which was actually really uncanny, and over one teacher looked at All Might with suspicion in their eyes, wondering if that was his love child. All Might quickly denied the possibility, as he never had the time for that. Still, the girl looked at the boy who was quickly surrounded by 3 minions who lifted out all the rubble trapping her, as the 0-pointer was raising its foot about them, and her savior smiled at her. Hey, can you grab me before I fall and take me to safety? Then Toru saw Izuku take a card from a deck and eating it just below the robot before yelling. 16th Arcana. The earth started to rumble. Izuku felt the pressure on his brain, as all the cards he summoned before vanished. He summoned only 1 Arcana before now and it left him pretty sluggish for a few days. He also knew that the exam took a lot of his energy earlier, especially with maintaining the 10 he lent to an unknown student. Still, the green bean was determined. There was someone behind him, someone to protect. So, he did the only thing he could as he mustered every ounce of strength he had, the air sparking madly around him. Toru could even see some blood dripping from his nose. 𝗂𝗧𝗏 Ultra. Then, the light went out, and he only sensed something soft catching him instead of the ground. The fuck? All the teachers were looking at the same screen, not believing their eyes. A 0-pointer, a machine capable of taking down villains and no student before the 2nd year were supposed to take down as a team and individually in the 3rd, was currently impaled in front of them by what looked like a small Babylonian tower. The only one not freaking out was Nezu, sipping his tea as he held out a sheet. Izuku Midoriya, extremely late bloomer, despite his relationship with Atsuhiro Sako. This one assured him the kid was not his biological son. However, he firmly recommended him to Nezu, promising the boy was fun, despite what his school might say. The rat was elated. Sure, the boy came recommended, but he wanted to see for himself what he was made of. Smart but heroic, smiling in front of adversity, and powerful enough to prove he could own up to his choice. Therefore, Nezu thoroughly ignored every piece of slander Alder wrote about Izuku as a scary student capable of blackmailing everyone, including the teachers. Or rather, he read them. He read the incident report and cackled madly. Oh yes, he was going to have so much fun with this boy. Then suddenly, All Might. She did a double check. The one with her was a boy with bushy green hair who did an uncanny impersonation of All Might, which stopped her cries. 1 moment later, as she also saw the legs falling toward them, the boy seemed confident and asked her to catch him. Before she could ask for details, he acted. If she didn't have a front row seat to this spectacle, she wouldn't have believed it. At first, she had thought her savior could summon beings to help him. Then he just summoned a spike that pierced through and destroyed the robot, saving both of them in the process whilst yelling plus ultra. She had to admit, it was more than impressive, especially as he smiled toward her, just before falling unconscious. At least, her hero of the day was safe in her arms as she began to take him away safely. Hey, he was kind of cute and saved. He deserved a little rest in her arms. Meanwhile, a certain glasses-wearing student who was seriously thinking that Izuku was crazy or someone who had no place in the UA then, with everyone else, he saw Izuku rush towards someone crying for help. Cries that were supposedly around the 0-pointer. It was probably a trap. After all, President Mike said it was to evaluate their situational awareness. Therefore, Izuku was definitely going to get him eliminated. Then he saw a girl with plug-like earphone jacks hanging from each of her earlobes at the end of 2 thin cords running after him. There is actually someone there. Ida took a second and decided to not move. After all, the rules never said they got points for saving people. Wait, the rules. Why did he feel like he missed something important? Then, Present Mike yelled the end of the examination. Oh well, all was going to be well. After all, he did not even need recovery girl. Izuku had the biggest headache he's ever had. It was as if Mr. Compress played the saxophone in his brain. Before you asked how Izuku knew how that sounded, Mr. Compress described himself as a man of many talents, and the saxophone was an excellent way to troll opponents. Also, a very good improvised weapon. So, Sleeping Beauty finally woke up. Nice. Izuku knew exactly who was that sarcastic and only could flip him the finger. Once again, Katsuki's laughter resonated in his head. Seriously, Kaken, my head hurts a lot. Our hero pleaded meekly to his friend. Serve you right, trying to play the hero. Katsuki replied, looking more like a villain than a hero at that moment. And what are we going to be? Snapped in Izuku, who was still in pain and not opening his eyes. Never said you were wrong, approved Kaken, but once again without saying the truth. Oh, did you do it because the girl was cute? Don't know. She was invisible but needed help, said an Izuku who was still collecting everything he could remember. Oh, right, the robot. Did I get the robot? I didn't even try to do something that crazy. And I'm me, said Katsuki proudly, who prepared a glass of water for his friend. I'm still going to beat your score. It was still worth 0 points. Sure, but we will both know I beat the giant robot. This once again managed to make Katsuki chuckle. Sorry, is the green guy awake? Said a girly voice as the door opened to reveal a floating uniform. Katsuki looked at that and made a gesture. Hey, guess what, Izuku? Apparently, the girl you saved is here. Yes, Katsuki said the name of his friend on purpose in front of the girl. Toru studied both boys as she advanced in the room, and both boys continued to banter. You sure? Unless they have another girl as invisible as you're dumb? Yes. It made the girl laugh bitterly. Yes, she was invisible, but saving her was not dumb but incredibly brave. That is why she stuck her tongue at Katsuki. Happy for her quirk. Hey, she was invisible. What was there to lose? It wasn't dangerous after all. And Katsuki seemed like the friendly kind of jerk toward Izuku. Izuku grumbled as he opened his eyes and just smiled at the girl he managed to help. Hi there, I hope everything's alright. Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say, my name is Toru Hagakure. I wanted to thank you and give you, my number, so we could tell each other when we get our admission to UA. Also, to thank you for saving me when it got dangerous. Izuku was at that moment too tired to properly register what happened, and he simply nodded before the girl wrote a number on a sheet of paper and then promptly left. Don't forget to send a message with your name. Katsuki did what every friend should do in such a situation, knowing how Izuku would react if he let him process what happened. He took Izuku's phone and sent the message from it, registering the number under Toru the cutie, all the while cackling madly. Izuku's face was going to be priceless. Hey, Katsuki was excellent at making things explode, and he was proud to include Izuku on the list. Oh god, he never hoped for everyone to get in the UA, not even himself. Not even Izuku. But this girl, if she was there too, as apparently she hoped, Katsuki would have unlimited material for teasing Izuku. So many possibilities. Now, you know what is going to be fun, said a little troll with blonde hair. You're going to have to explain to your mom how you got sent to the infirmary. Izuku paled significantly as Kaken helped him to his feet. Was it still too late to get killed by the 0-pointer? It's time to panic. Saying 𝐭𝐸 went nuclear when she learned what happened to her son was an understatement. It took Atsuhiro and Izuku hugging her to stop her from going to the UA and teaching the concept of neutering to a certain 𝐒𝐿 principle. Mr. Compress wondered if 𝐻𝗔𝗀 ever knew how close it was. Seriously. At first Izuku was all for keeping it under the rug. The problem was Katsuki, since they started being friends again. Izuku rediscovered the whole jerk-ass downside that was part of his friend. If he could embarrass or annoy Izuku in a fun way, he would. So guess what happened when his mom had the great idea of inviting the Bakugus over for dinner after the exam? Of course, Katsuki waited for the perfect moment to drop the bomb by asking how Izuku was since the exam, as Katsuki had to wait for him at the infirmary. Mitsuki was mixed with pride, worry and laughter at the news. She knew that if Katsuki did that, Izuku was most likely fine. However, she was extremely proud of Katsuki, learning about how timing can be used to maximize his effect. She was going to teach him with Masaru how to make a perfect innocent smile. Seriously. Her son had a perfect villain face. It completely ruined the innocent side of the prank. However, Mitsuki was filled with only pride when Katsuki followed by the end of the story, as 𝐭𝐸 was finally calming her nerves. As her chubby friend was sitting back, still hugged by her boyfriend, Atsuhiro was glaring daggers with his eyes at Katsuki, who apparently wanted vengeance for the squid. Oh, and Izuku, did you think to send a text to Toru to tell her that you were fine? Adding oil to 𝐭𝐸's metaphorical gas fire. What a move. Katsuki, you know you will pay for that later. 𝐭𝐸 instantly went giddy while squealing in delight. Atsuhiro stared at Katsuki. and raised his thumb in approval. The explosive boy noted and nodded. Teasing Izuku about his love life was okay, but not when it was life-threatening. Julie noted. A girl, 𝐭 squeaked out, while her son tried to switch the subject. However, Katsuki wanted revenge for the fact that Izuku got to destroy a 0-pointer when he hadn't. He was a bit spiteful after all, and he had prepared beforehand for the whole situation. Oh yes, she was definitely a girl, and let's just say she gave her number to Izuku because. Katsuki, end that sentence and I will end your life sooner than expected, Izuku squeaked out, wanting to sound threatening but failing. Because our favorite greenie actually got in the infirmary as a result of saving her, and in the process destroying the most dangerous robot in the field. All in one hit. Katsuki actually had trouble saying that, as he was admitting that for one instant, Izuku had more firepower than him. However, practicality won over. He could always perfect a super move later, but Izuku's terrified face was priceless. Everyone looked at Izuku with a knowing smile, as he was wondering if he could use his quirk to disappear into a hole. He somehow became so red that everyone couldn't help but laugh. He was the perfect tomato, as he couldn't stand everyone staring. I swear, Kaken, you will pay. Was she cute though? Asked Atsuhiro. Not wanting to let his surrogate son have any peace, Izuku was showing a weak point, and as a mentor, it was his duty to torture him so he would never fall into the enemy's trick. Okay, that was the official reason. Mr. Compress wanted just to tease the hell out of him. Well, let's say you'd have a hard time knowing where to look, said Katsuki, while counting on his finger for his friend's reaction. 3, 2, 1. 𝐾𝐻𝑡𝑠UKI. You know she had an invisibility mutation quirk. Though I still don't know if she can control the light by adjusting her cells or if it is an imperceptibility quirk. Wait, no, she did not have a shadow, so she has a living Kamo skin. As Izuku began to mutter about a certain see-through girl, Katsuki had the biggest shit-eating grin ever. 𝐭 knew as well as him that Izuku loved quirks above all. So a girl with an interesting quirk. Of course it was going to interest him plenty and occupy his thoughts. So is his mother. She was purely ecstatic and noted in her mental notebook the name of Toru. Finally, her boy could finally start talking to a girl. Not that she would have minded if he was not attracted to girls. However, as a mother, she was happy that he was finally breaking out of his shell. And I'm wondering, does it still count as a complex mutant quirk? If yes, does that mean she could actually bypass most anti-quirk quirks? That would be an excellent test to determine her nature. Still muttering, unsurprisingly to everyone. So, when Izuku finally noticed the silence and how everyone looked at him, Izuku did the smart thing. He ran back to his bedroom to be safe. Then he proceeded to swear vengeance against Katsuki as hard as he could while screaming inside a pillow. It was surprisingly cathartic. Well, all I have to hope as a mother is that the girl ends up in UA too. Katsuki, would you be a dear and tell you if Deku and 𝗵𝘃 are in the same classroom? Auntie, I was the one adding the girl's number in his phone and who sent the first message because I knew he wouldn't dare to start the conversation, announced Katsuki proudly. He was certainly not a wingman for his friend. He was just doing it to embarrass him so much he would hide under a rock. However, both moms took it as Katsuki forcing Izuku's hand so that he would move forward. What a good friend to help him fight his shyness. Her son was sometimes, well often, a sparkling pile of trash, but it was this kind of sparkling that made her remember he was nice deep inside. After all, he did want to be a hero. No one who wanted to become a hero was a bad person, right? Still, our favorite Pomeranian almost regretted what he did, as he was subject to 𝐭's infamous bone-crushing hug. One of the few reasons he had a sane fear of her. Well, that and the fact he did remember what she did to the one guy who tried to kidnap Izuku because of his apparent lack of quirk. And the fact she then asked his mother for help to do the usual. He truly did not want to dwell on how both mothers met and what they did in their eclectic youth, or who was this dear old kendo they sometimes spoke of, and how it was fun to see him terrified of them. Katsuki did ask his father about that when he was 7. The only answer he got from his dad was that there was probably a reason why Hisashi's ambulance was late in arriving at the hospital because of several fights between villains and various vigilantes. He confided to his son that he was not sure of who was there because of a favor and he preferred not to know so that he could still sleep well at night. That day, Katsuki thought his dad was a coward. Now, he knew his dad was a sage, and when he spoke, you better listen. Still, 𝐭's cooking was as usual and it had been a fun evening. Bakugu's family went home happily and Atsuhiro joined 𝐭 in a nice hug. While he was still thinking about what Nezu told him, passing on to him what Recovery Girl found about Izuku. All jokes aside, Izuku's exploit almost went badly for him. If he had not been trained by him, his brain would have exploded exactly like in Scanner. Instead, he just bled a lot. Recovery Girl expected him to be tired for a few days. He was going to talk to 𝐭 about it. Out of question, he left something like that unsaid. Izuku was her son before he was his disciple. and she deserved to know that Izuku's quirk had not yet stabilized. Both of them had theorized that the longer a late-blooming quirk took to be mastered, the stronger. Atsuhiro had to train 1.5 years to use it without any side effects. Still, he was stronger in his use than his favorite green-haired kid. Still, it was worrying. Either his training was not effective enough or Izuku's power was going to be off the chart when fully formed. And it was somewhat bad. Yes, he heard about the legendary fight between All Might and All for One. As one of the heirs of the big three of the dawn of the quirk, he needed to check on all the others. However, as 𝗂𝗍𝗵𝗲 said himself, that bastard All for One always has plans in his plans. If you think he's dead, he's probably somewhere else drinking bourbon. Apparently, his ancestor managed to kill AFO more than a few times by teaming up with various people and managing to help some nice fellows to steal one of the few things the immortal ever loved. 𝗂𝗍 did not write a lot about it, except it was probably what wiped out North Korea as AFO went full berserk that day. It also served to illustrate how powerful the man was to wipe out single-handedly a country, and then managed to cover it up. So, unless the literal god of death assured him that Satan was back on his throne in hell, Atsuhiro was going to be worried. That kind of quirk was something that AFO would love to have. Oh well, Nenzu promised him that the UA would certainly have the facilities to protect his boy. Yes, the magician already had the results. He simply did not want to spoil the surprise to the boys and everyone else. And all the embarrassing questions, he didn't have an answer ready for, such as how the hell you're on a speaking terms with Nenzu if you simply train some sports people. In hindsight, he had to find a better story. Quick, when he almost wondered why he tried so hard, 𝗏𝐻 nudged herself a bit more against him. Sure, she did not have the svelte figure she had before. However, she was still the kind, caring, intelligent, and terrifying woman he had always known and loved since, well, quite a long time. Having her in his arms, her heat and love against him. Honestly, he couldn't have asked for more. Therefore, he decided to sleep happily. 1 week later, as Recovery Girl expected, while her quirk did heal whatever little brain damage Izuku had, the boy was heavily exhausted. All his training had been for dexterity and flexibility. The good doctor explicitly prohibited the kid from using his quirk in any circumstance. Atsuhiro had a talk with Bakugo, who did not accept explicitly to make sure Izuku did not use his quirk but rather, and he quoted to 𝗏𝐻, "I don't want my rival to not be accepted because he broke some dumbass's arms." It was the closest they could get from him, he knew. Recovery Girl also told Atsuhiro that Izuku was to move as little as possible during the weekend. Therefore, Izuku missed for the first time in almost a year his weekly meeting with a certain villain. What could go wrong? So, this is the bar with no name, right? Kurogiri sighed, as the delivery men brought everything. A new bar, the replacement for his collection of various priceless alcohol, new furniture, pretty much everything. The reason why? Tamura had been in an extremely murderous mood. So murderous, in fact, that he actually went for a very enthusiastic walk around the neighborhood. Oh well, at least, with his quirk, there would be no need to dispose of the corpse. Also, the murder place did not get its name by being somewhere with people with a big heart and a good chance to go to heaven. Kurogiri was at least happy that Tamura did not kill off some random civils. He chose and attacked only people no one would miss or cry over. Moreover, the name of Decay was slowly creeping his name in the underground as a particularly efficient killer for hire for now. His specialty, killing heroes who corrupted the society. Not for the same reason as Stain, as the killer wanted to clean the system. Tamura wanted to destroy it. However, for now, their methods were aligned and he had asked his sensei and Kurogiri to prepare a meeting with the man. Talking and playing with Izuku helped him a lot in thinking about his plans. He, however, was still going to try the 𝗏𝗏 against All Might One. He just needed a good opportunity to do that. However, Tamura was thinking more and more about Sensei's words. 𝗏𝗏 was fabricated, which meant reproducible. Where were the prototypes? Where was the test result? Which heroes were used in order to be sure it could kill All Might? Tamura had none of that. All he had was a tall, dumb, black, muscular thing with its brain on the outside. Tamura loved his sensei and would kill for him. However, he also knew one important thing. Sensei was a troll of the highest order. He would be proud if Tamura won, but he certainly did not expect him to. After all, if killing All Might was that easy, his master wouldn't look like he'd be able to do the casting as the next Mr. Potato in Toy Story 34. The only reason he didn't. According to his master, only one thing was more evil than him, and it was Disney. Still, Tamura was a bit stressed since he was not able to play with. No, Izuku was not his friend. Clearly not. He was just an excellent potential teammate with an interesting background and a fun design. Oh god. He was interested in a character's backstory. Kurogiri was just signing off the delivery when Tamura managed to break the glasses with the sound of his realization. His calm and love for his protege was immense. Immense was not infinite. The following week, all Tamura had to eat was broccoli. Kurogiri's reason, budget restriction. Mitsuki was working on the hero suit for Izuku when she heard the scream. The panicked usual scream she learned to not panic from when it was heard. Katsuki, Izuku just received his letter. 𝐿𝐵, and there was the answer she expected. Thanks for the pillow, dear, 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 said confidently, as her son was taking his precious envelope with the final result, as if it could break. Why was she so sure? Because she trusted her soon-to-be new fiancé and believed in her son. The son who was promptly hit in the head by a sharp pillow launched by Atsuhiro, thanks to his magnificent random bullshit. Yes, she still did not tell him she knew he was Mr. Compress. She was waiting for him to finally notice that his costume was cleaner and ironed correctly. Always a pleasure, said an ever-smiling Atsuhiro, as Izuku was finally starting to breathe again and was ready to rend their ears useless with his screaming once more. Izuku, if your next scream isn't because of the result, I swear I will throw a pan at you. I'm in the kitchen, and while I miss you both lots when I'm away, I assure you my aim is excellent. He got hit for his joke by the pillow that 𝐭𝐴 grabbed before throwing it at him. Nonetheless, it helped Izuku calm down by a lot. Finally, the letter. He couldn't wait to tell his friends, but what if he failed because he passed out in the end? As Izuku was almost screaming, he felt Atsuhiro pat him softly on his back, as he was now used to during their training session. His, paternal figure. Sure, Green Bean still loved All Might, but even he noticed the shift in his own fan fiction. Before, it was the story of a quirkless boy meeting All Might and becoming his Robin. Now, some of his readers were half-jokingly telling him to change his pseudo to All Might Jishin. He actually was thinking of doing that, as now Mr. Compress was often the hero in some of his stories, saving both him and All Might before disappearing in the night. The difference between All Might and Atsuhiro? Well, aside from his catchphrase, the one who was there was Atsuhiro, his teacher. With renewed confidence, Izuku ripped open the envelope and from it fell a small disc, before a hologram went out of it. Holy, now he understood the first explosion in the morning. All Might, in hologram in front of him. Even if it was a rejection letter, he was going to keep it. If only so he could look on the internet how to make it work as a very big poster. It was bound to be a really rare collector item in the future. Somewhere, in a certain hero agency, Night-Eye raised his head. Someone got a piece of limited All Might merchandise before me. How do you even know that, sir? It's my quirk. Even Mirio did not know what to answer to that, and decided to promptly ignore that. They had bad guys to catch, like those villains who took, when no one was looking, 40 cakes. 40 cakes. That was as many as 4 tens, and Mirio was not letting such a crime go unpunished. I am here, as a projection, but still now you might be wondering why it is I who is delivering you this message. Well, fear not. It is because, as of next year, I will be teaching at UA Academy. Izuku almost fainted, as now he understood the second explosion in the morning. Still, he was supported by his mother too, and he could do it. First of all, congratulations on getting the 5th best score at the written test this year. Quite excellent, especially the quirk analysis part. But unless you seek to become a support hero such as Power Loader, a big brain isn't enough. Not that Power Loader is weak, of course. So, let's speak about the practical test. The way you fought, conservatively and by dividing your summonings according to their strength, was indeed efficient. You managed to win a solid 37 points. We had to deduce points since one of your summons was hijacked by another student. Izuku nodded impatiently, as he was now happy to know he helped someone for his exam. However, it brings us to another set of points. What? Because when you want to become a hero, do people expect you to simply punch the bad guy? Of course not. Well, at least that isn't the kind of hero we seek to form at UA. We all saw you when the 0-pointer arrived. We knew there was a girl there and we were ready to intervene if necessary. I mean, we're heroes and pros at that. However, when you saw someone was helpless, we all saw you turn around without hesitation. Maybe it is cheesy, but that is something I like, kid. So, a whole 40 points for rescuing the girl, reassuring her efficiently, and also for the nice homage. I almost as if I was there, said All Might while pose. As Izuku was overhyped, overjoyed and crying a lot, with 𝐭𝐴, while Atsuhiro opened the door to let the water flow outside. The neighbors looked at the familiar spectacle and smiled. So, young Midoriya, I am proud to tell you that you managed to get the best practical score this year, tying only with one other person. Oh, so that was why there was an explosion powerful enough they actually mistook it for a small earthquake. Because everyone could see 2 names on the top of the list, Katsuki and Izuku. My boy, I am happy to welcome you to UA. Welcome to your Hero Academia. That was when the hologram finally cut and Atsuhiro looked at Izuku with a knowing smile. 𝐭𝐴 was still crying tears of joy too, when Izuku rushed at Atsuhiro and tackled him into a hug. Mr. Compress almost fell, as the boy almost broke his spine and said, I did it. I did it, Dad. I did it with your training. Atsuhiro and 𝐭 had a moment of silence, as they both realized what Izuku just said. Before he did too, becoming paler than a sheet of paper. I know you aren't married to Mom, but... Before his surrogate son could put his foot in his mouth again, the magician vigilante lifted him into the air and locked him in a powerful hug. I don't care who your father is, but I'm proud to think of you as my disciple and son, Izuku. Even him, Mr. Compress, who did not cry when he took a hit from 𝗵𝗃 in the face, did cry that night, Izuku against him. 𝐭 looked at the spectacle and smiled. What a shame that Hisashi's father was not alive. While his son was a bad memory, the man had been really nice and had been angry when he learned his son was running away because of Izuku's quirklessness, as in really angry and apologizing to 𝐭 and Izuku, as Little Ray as he used to call Izuku. She remembered him when he explained that his mother was Spanish and nobody expected him to speak Spanish. Even he chuckled that nobody expected him when he was inquisitive. Sadly, the man died of anger and sadness a few days after his son. He had been kind enough to leave them a bit more money. It was the only reason 𝐭 still went each year to the Midoriya's shrine. Katsuki got his earlier, and he already knew his result in the nerd, explaining why the hell he was pouting in his bedroom. 0 pointers that did not bring any points, his ass. Sure, the reason that All Might gave made sense, but seriously. Now he was tied with Izuku. Tied. Well, at least he had been third in the written exam, but still. It means Izuku was really shoulder against shoulder. Mitsuki smiled as her son cackling maniacally as a villain. Finally he stopped mopping. Katsuki had many qualities, and one of the best was truly his capacity to rebound as long as he could get back at whoever he bet. It truly helped him to go above everyone, and she had truly feared for a long time he couldn't have a rival that would make him work even harder. Apparently the problem was now over. Geez, Tamura, I'm sorry I told you that 5 times. If you had a cell phone, it would have been easier, you know. Right now, 2 young men were drinking smoothies in front of the store, since it had a no-food policy. The blue-haired manchild had asked Izuku to pay him a smoothie to compensate for his absence for his meeting. Sure, he could vaguely understand that Izuku would need to work, but he truly needed to find a way to tempt Izuku into the dark side. He needed to step up his game, to gain some fame. A character such as Izuku would need fame to be interested in a group, but first, he needed to play his card to not make Izuku afraid and run. After all, he was also as nervous as a bunny and would run away if the predator was not friendly enough. So, Tamura, still drinking an ice-cold smoothie, got a brain freeze as he thought more of his evil plan than anything else, making Izuku laugh. Also, he needed to buy a cell phone. Izuku, when you stop laughing, we're going out to buy phones. I saw the thing you use. It is closer to a walkie-talkie than a freaking phone. Tamura, you don't even have one. But I have money and I refuse to let one of my favorite minions have something subpar. Izuku chose to interpret that as I'm rewarding you for doing well. Let's just say Tamura was not amused by Izuku taking a normal phone but with an All Might skin. As for him, well, he bought a Pearphone 22. According to the vendor, it was the best in town. Good thing he couldn't dust it anymore, right? Now, dear readers, let's skip ahead in time a bit. The day the 2 boys were going to their new school. Both were totally aware they were in the same class, but well, I'm not going to your home in the morning ever again. Your stepdad threw a squid at me. What's he going to do next time? Mr. Compress had prepared a cream pie with a clown he knew. Izuku approved of Kaken's fear and so decided to go separately. Not to mention that his mom was checking everything before he left. Actually, Kaken did not risk anything, as Atsuhiro was working today. By working, he had explained to his son, he was going to steal some criminals' funds of war and a few pieces of evidence for underground heroes. Therefore, he was going to be absent for a few days. Hey, communication was important in a family, and Atsuhiro had enough problems because he did not say things clearly before. He learned from his mistakes. Also, he did not tell 𝐭 or Izuku he was going to steal a diamond to make a special ring for a special woman of his heart. Still, it was with a smile, cards in one pocket and a coin dancing in his finger that Izuku went to his school. While his coins were dancing, yes, coins, between his fingers, Izuku knew the day was going to be long as he entered the room, hearing a small explosion. Don't put your legs on your desk. This is disrespectful toward your school and the upperclassmen who use the desk before you. Tell me more about it, extra. Oh sweet. Apparently glasses was now officially an extra in Katsuki's eyes, though Izuku could see why. I don't think it annoys anyone. Personally, I don't care about it, said Izuku helpfully, gathering attention on him, especially with the way Katsuki smiled at him, like a shark who found a bleeding dolphin. Glasses stared at him before bending at 90 degrees. Oh, you. I remember you. I apologize for being disrespectful towards you during the exam since you understood the true secret of... First of all, no problem. If I can be friends with Kaken, I can be friends with anyone. Second, my name is Izuku Midoriya. Thirdly, someone simply needed help. 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲, said a feminine voice that 𝗧𝗑 immediately recognized, as he slowly turned and saw both the girl who helped him not fall on his face and, more importantly, a floating uniform. Toru, before you ask, Deku, I already messaged Auntie. Fuck you Kaken, time to do or die. Before anyone else had the time to say anything else, a yellow caterpillar hobo entered the classroom. Everyone had a short moment while they wondered what was going on, when suddenly 𝗧𝗑 bellowed with a loud voice, copying a girl he knew who was a class president. 𝐒𝐴𝐳 Atsuhiro told him people were most likely to obey when issued a simple order in a situation where they had no idea how to react. In 𝗧𝗑's case, it was because his brain managed to register the hobo in front of him. After all, his friends who played the hero card game with him knew him as the eraser spammer. 𝗧𝗑 knew who the man in front of them was and how he was known for his no-nonsense attitude. Hell, if his research were correct, the man was known to be quite trigger-happy with his expulsions, or rather demotion to Gen Ed. Still, it was a threat. Aizawa did not smile when he saw the students obeying the green-haired kid. One of them seemed to have some brains and understood the situation quicker than most. 5 seconds. In the real world, a villain could have easily killed you in those 5 seconds. Harsh words. True, yes, but harsh seeing they were literally on their first day at school. Nonetheless, everyone stayed silent, including an almost exploding Katsuki who wanted to yell at the hobo. However, if 𝗧𝗑 had been ordering them and was doing his best statue impression, it meant the man was the real deal. Shit. Now, take out the gym uniform from inside your desk. We will do a physical aptitude test. 𝗧𝗑 gulped. He had a good idea of what he could expect from the strange man who was apparently their homeroom teacher. DIIIE 753. 3 meters. Yep, Katsuki was indeed even stronger than before. Not wanting to let Deku get ahead of him, he actually went full power on that ball, sweating a bit before his friend handed him a towel. It was useful to avoid incidents, and 𝗧𝗑 always packed a few in case Katsuki needed one. If Katsuki tried to yell that he did not need Deku to care for him, his friend would smile and simply say it as Auntie Mitsuki who asked. That was a good enough reason. Even Katsuki knew better than to argue with his mother. Still, everyone was now looking at the test excitedly, and when a certain pink girl tried to speak, oh, it seems so foo. A wild 𝗧𝗑 intercepted Mina's mouth with a card and stopped her mid-sentence, as Aizawa locked them in with his stare. It seems what? Nothing, sir. She was clearly not saying it was a fun activity to do. Clearly not. The temperature seemed to freeze, as 𝗧𝗑 tried his best innocent smile, the one he used once on 𝗵𝗲 to win a card game. It was that effective. Aizawa did not give a shit. However, since a student clearly knew what to expect, unless someone said something dumb. Well, the denial is absolutely not specific, but I guess I will let it pass. And then Mr. Can't read the room to save his life, Denki said. Oh well, at least it's going to be super fun. 𝗧𝗑 looked at Denki as if he just said that Endeavor was leagues better than All Might. 𝗧𝗑 had the patience of a saint. His stepdad was a prankster who loved to tease him. His best friend was most of the time a jerk, and the rest of it, he was a troll. His other friend was a crusty man who had a smile that even Freddy Krueger would find gruesome, and he had the temper to go with it. And yet, Denki managed to make him yell at him with a furious shout, UDUMBASS. We almost managed to avoid the threat. Everyone looked, not understanding anything, at 𝗧𝗑, who took his hand off Mina's face, while Aizawa was grinning like the cat who caught the canary. I see someone did his research. Well, since apparently your class, -1, takes this class as one for funsies. 𝗧𝗑 was clearly making the same sound as a dog who was sad, as the teacher followed. So, the student who made it dead last in the class will get expelled. Everyone began to yell, as they all wanted to stay in the class, and especially as it was the first day at school, of course. 𝗧𝗑 smiled like a sad child. He pointed at the teacher, completely defeated. Shota Aizawa, underground hero, Eraserhead. He isn't in the top 100 heroes because he doesn't want fame. He is also known for having the highest expulsion rate in Japan. Everyone seemed scared, especially as they saw Katsuki, the foul-mouthed guy who clearly knew 𝗧𝗑 well, becoming paler. Apparently, he trusted his friend's info. So before anyone thinks he isn't serious, last year he demoted his entire class down to Gen Ed, and a few of them actually dropped out. Many got back at the end of the year, but he's dead serious. Shota Aizawa was grinning with a smile not unlike Tamura's, maybe a distant cousin. Still, Shota appreciated that the problem child of the exam actually did his presentation for him. So, the kid had the heart of a hero, as All Might said, but at least he had some brains. Maybe he wasn't hopeless. Currently, the two most panicky people in the class were Toru and Hitoshi. Why? Because their quirk was clearly not flashy or capable of helping them in athletics. So, while Toru actually practiced at the gym, Hitoshi was, well, he was a nerd. Sure, it did not show well. However, he did not get the bags under his eyes by not finishing Darker Bloodborne Soul 3 this week. So, yes, the tall purple-haired guy was actually under a minor freakout of his own. unless he was really lucky and that the summoner he stole from during the exam was there. Then, for the second time in his life, Lady Luck smiled at Hitoshi with her brightest smile. Izuku just threw a King of Hearts card on the ground, before asking Kaken to give him a ball for the throwing exercise. "Well, best of luck, guys," said the smiling Sunshine Boy, as he tried to not use too much of his power. He was still recovering after all, and one king was the best he could do right now. However, having the really buff king next to him would clearly allow him to do well enough. "Is that not going to make you pass out, after the stunt you pulled last week?" asked Aizawa, that was so close to activating his quirk but could see Izuku was looking as if he ran a lap around the stadium already. "No, sir," said a dead-tired Izuku, raising his fist nonetheless. Him and his stepdad did lots of exercises to make sure Izuku didn't pass out. Also, he knows that if he passes out, his mom will give me the right to send him back home, explained Katsuki for him, cracking the joints of his hands. Apparently, he was ready to make good on that promise. Kirishima then raised an eyebrow, just like Aizawa. It seemed quite tame. "That doesn't seem too bad. By kicking him so hard that he will be airborne most of the time," he shouted out, his hands letting out a loud bang at the end of the sentence. Aizawa looked at the strange duo, pinching the bridge of his nose. Yup, he had already found the problem children duo of the year, and of course it had to be the two valedictorians of the entrance exam, especially as apparently Izuku took Katsuki's words seriously, if his face was any indication. "No violence in my class. Also, Midoriya, if I see you're on the verge of collapsing, I will deactivate your quirk and send you home." Aizawa would have questioned what kind of person had a friendship like that. Then he remembered his relationship with Hisashi. Izuku nodded, before asking the king to throw the ball the harder it could. The ball flew clearly higher than what a human could have done before landing. 350 meters. A good score, even if it makes Katsuki grin like a dumbass. Hitoshi went next and asked the king, "Hey, Card Man, how does it feel to be a servant?" said Purple Man before smacking the king's back. Apparently, having a foul tongue was a secondary mutation quirk, as the card began to curse Hitoshi before he used his brainwashing on him, thus repeating Izuku's score. Everyone seemed a bit surprised. "Ooh, so you were the one who hijacked some of my cards, right?" said a surprisingly excited Izuku, who seemed to have his stamina restored suddenly. Gyro could have sworn she heard Katsuki mutter, "Damn quirk nerd." "Huh, strange. Oh right, villainous quirk," remembered Hitoshi. Time to see everyone get far away from him and the summon disappear. Or to see the bushy-haired boy getting excited, while Katsuki looked at everyone, giving them the PSA about Izuku. "Okay, guys, listen up. Izuku is someone who is smart, but honestly, if Sherlock Holmes was real, I would have thought Auntie Inko did the wise thing and left his father for him. His passion, quirks, nothing is villainous or bad to him. You can ask him for tips, but be prepared. He will break down your whole life doing it. His tips are useful. However, he can be scary when he does that." As in whole school avoided him because he broke into the school radio room and began to reveal everyone's secrets. Mina raised her hand, smiling maliciously. For one moment, everyone seemed to have forgotten the threat, as Izuku was speaking excitedly with Hitoshi, enumerating all the ways his power would be useful for rescue or negotiating. Any idea about his type of girl? It can make for some fun teasing. Or guy if he swings that way. Katsuki looked at Mina and gave her the same smile, giving her a thumbs up. Izuku loves quirks. The more interesting like Invici girl, the better. Panda eyes. Toru wanted to be the center of attention, but right now it was quite embarrassing. And somehow, it was Aizawa who saved her, by coughing and making his students remember they had to prove their worth. At least, Aizawa was reassured about Izuku. Honestly, what kind of kid doesn't test their limits about their quirk? He had been scared about the whole tower-killing robot, but apparently, Izuku had been properly drilled on the importance of being moderated in the use of his power. His previous mentor was a good teacher. Indeed, Aizawa was pretty sure the kid had been mentored by some kind of pro or something indeed. While the Bakugo boy was the talented type and someone who worked hard to increase his capacity despite his burning personality, Izuku was the one who had to work hard to grow. It was nice that the pair found each other. Clearly Izuku served as the brains and words while Katsuki was the guts and the muscle. Not that they were limited in their roles. Honestly speaking, Aizawa had a list of students who could have been expelled today if they did not do well enough. Izuku Midoriya if he had been dumb enough to show off. Katsuki Bakugo if he tried to be violent. He was just a troll with a brash personality but was not a bad guy. Every circle of friends needed a guy like him to tell the hard truths. Hitoshi Shinso if the kid did not find a way to use his quirk for the exam. Yes, he did use the same trick that he used during the entrance exam, but good enough. Hopefully, Midoriya breaking down his power and apparently with the clear intention of making him work on it, would help the boy improve. All the others, if they had the right attitude and were serious about their efforts, they would be safe. However, he simply wanted to mess with the kids a bit. It was good to be a teacher. At that moment, Aizawa's smile would have made a certain spud-faced villain proud. Nonetheless, Aizawa almost did a spit take when the flexibility exam came. Both Toru and Mina got a fairly good score, doing good poses and showcasing very well why it was important to be flexible. Though most of the boys, except the most mature ones such as Izuku or Bakugo, were more interested in the flexibility of the girls. Young people, why did humans have to have hormones? However, he was not prepared to see Izuku smiling while dislocating his own arm. Pretty much everyone had the same reaction when the boy took his limping arm and used it to break the girl's previous record. Aizawa was pretty sure a human arm should not bend that much naturally. Then again, Izuku did disjoint himself by doing that. The only one not surprised was apparently the exploding boy, who seemed just jaded at the sight. Apparently something he was used to. Yeah, I forgot that Izuku could do that. He is also very good at doing that to other people's bodies. He warned with his shark-like smile. Seriously, Aizawa had serious doubts about his previous assessment of the boy's dynamic. Was Katsuki the sane one? What did he mean by to others? Aizawa almost sent Izuku back home, expelled and with the order to see recovery girl when he saw him popped his arm back in place like it was an usual thing for him. No sign of pain or anything. His teacher taught him that. Asked an unsure Aizawa to Katsuki. Yep, that man is insane. One word of advice. Never say that in front of him. He's a master in fighting with random bullshit, said Katsuki seriously, remembering his own experiences with the man. Aizawa was not sure if Katsuki was just kidding or if he was serious. Considering Izuku's abilities, it was most likely the truth. And I thought All Might was nuts, thought the coffee-deprived teacher. Suddenly he was happy to not meet that man. Meanwhile, a certain see-through girl was thinking about how she could improve her score. It was not bad for now, but honestly, she knew she was just above average for a human. That is when Izuku came to her, smiling. So, how are you doing? He said, as the king broke the machine to measure grip strength. Yeah, I'm doing my best, but honestly, I'm worried. Hard for me to use my quirk to improve my score like you or everyone else. You know, I was thinking about something. You need a high score, right? Toru nodded, while it was not truly visible. Nonetheless, Izuku seemed to see it and smiled at her, while he made a coin appear from his fingers. It was not there before, and he made it dance, the coin appearing and disappearing, as if it was a living and cowardly creature that went in and out. Why don't you make it as if you had a big score? You're invisible after all. Nobody can say that you didn't do it, or at least prove it. It is like when I do magic. Is it magic or is it simply you can't prove my trick? The invisible girl got hit by that thought. Oh, ooh, Toru liked the idea. Izuku couldn't see her smile, but it felt good. Deciding to have some fun and to thank him for his help, she kissed him on the cheek. Hey, thanks Izuku. Now, I still have a few scores I can try to improve. She left a redder than a tomato Izuku behind her as she began to take off her clothes. Time to be truly invisible, oh well. At least Izuku was thankful Kaken did not have his phone to immortalize the moment. Aizawa was thinking hard. Should he expel Izuku for giving strange ideas to other students for his test? Technically speaking, he just proved his willingness to work with others. However, he had now a naked invisible girl who somehow managed to break the Olympics record for the long jump, simply because he couldn't prove she did not do the jump and not simply jump sideways in the sand. God, he was just happy he could make a bullshit scoreboard for the class. He wouldn't have to explain his method of calculus. Still, he had been surprised by the idea. Let's allow it. Though he was going to ask the support team to make her a stealth suit akin to the Emperor's clothes. Because, seriously, being naked is a liability of the highest degree. Though he could see her potential as an underground hero or a high-grade sidekick, maybe with her hair. He heard that it was now more viable as a tech than before, especially as she indeed had a mutant quirk. He tried to erase it while she had her uniform on to no avail. However, he was now bothered by the students who looked at him with fear in their eyes. Apparently, they took at least a bit seriously what Midoriya said. Good. So, when the board appeared with various scores and that Kaminari was somehow last, the blonde boy was sweating bullets before suddenly Aizawa put on his best grin and said, it was a rational deception. Or rather, everyone did well enough, or smart enough so he doesn't have to eat anyone out of the UA yet. Oh well, he had the rest of the year to throw someone out. Still, he liked the sound of all his students suddenly collapsing in relief, especially a certain electric boy who was almost expelled. Deku, why the fuck you did not warn me about him? Asked Kaken, as he continued to wipe his sweat for his body. A heads up would have been fucking appreciated. Kaken, I thought he was supposed to teach the second and third years only. I don't have that much info, you know. Izuku tried to defend himself, since Yua was good at keeping information about what went on inside. HMMF. So, was he serious? Asked Ada, curious too. I counted 150 expulsions. Only 90-ish of his students managed to get back in his classroom. The others were effectively excluded from heroics. However, his students tend to be among the rising sidekicks. Heroes on the field after graduation, and they have the lowest rate of casualties, 𝗧𝗂 explained. Harsh but fair, as described by Mr. 𝗵𝗲. Honestly speaking, he preferred to fight Endeavor than Eraserhead, as he could and had managed to ambush him several times. He only managed to escape because he keeps gadgets on him like smoke pepper fog bombs. Still, his capture weapon was also extremely dangerous, and 𝗵𝗲 complimented 𝗧𝗂 for trying to learn a bit of how 𝐈𝐧𝐭𝐲 fought. Finding footage of Eraserhead's fights was a bitch to do though. Atsuhiro had to ask Nenzu. That is why I consider 𝗧𝗂 as my personal information broker. Leave him alone with someone for 10 minutes and he will know everything about them, Katsuki said proudly, while giving a light punch in 𝗧𝗂's shoulder, both boys smiling. Everything? Asked curiously Uraraka, not truly believing Katsuki, who tapped 𝗧𝗂's shoulder. Do your thing, 𝗧𝗂. On round face, said with determination Bakugo, pointing 𝗧𝗂 towards Uraraka. I thought you said it was creepy and 𝗧𝗂 was a bit afraid to do that suddenly and to appear weird. Now, this time, you have permission and I will hit you if you go too far. Somehow that managed to calm 𝗧𝗂 down. When he raised his head again, a strange light was in his eyes. 𝗧𝗂 looked a bit at Ochako and Uraraka. Ochako, birthday around Christmas, most likely a bit after. Born in the countryside from parents working in the construction field. Likes finger and fried foods. Has practiced guitar a long time ago but stopped, maybe because of financial trouble. Uraraka was clearly not expecting that impaling. 𝗧𝗂 did not seem to notice this and continued. Quirk, 5-point touch gravity nullification, but not the mass nor inertia, which has a really interesting application. Does the object keep the speed if she launches them and then cancels her quirk? To test later. Weakness, internal balance. Too much use of her quirk makes her balance go wrong internally, making her nauseous. Training can help attenuate the problem, but I recommend support items to help the body find its center of gravity. And stop, said Katsuki, making 𝗧𝗂 pause his muttering. As to Miura, Atsuhiro and Katsuki said, either 𝗧𝗂 had to say clearly what he was thinking or he kept it in his mind. Muttering was just indecisiveness. Speaking loudly and decisively was scarier for most people, but now his analysis was on demand. Everyone applauded while Ochako turned a nice shade of red. So, convinced now, round face. Katsuki was clearly looking proud as he was once again right. I'm Ochako and you just heard it, protested the said round-faced girl as she waved her arms about, as if to dispel the nickname out of the air. Before Katsuki could say anything, 𝗧𝗂 answered. He likes nicknames. If he gives you one, it means you're interesting to him. Otherwise, you're just an extra. Everyone looked at Ida, who grumbled, but rules are important. But nobody truly listened as they all went to change for the rest of the day. Still, the question on most of the students of 1A's minds after all that was whether to ask 𝗧𝗂 for his analysis or not. So, Katsuki, right. Why did you call 𝗧𝗂 Deku earlier? Asked a certain rock-hard boy, walking by 𝗧𝗂 and Katsuki. When he does something stupid or useless, he's Deku, shitty hair, growled Katsuki, who was still gauging everyone in class. Shitty hair, laughing to his nickname, earned him a few points. And you're both childhood friends who help each other become heroes. Manly, said as enthusiastic as ever Kirishima. TSS, I just make sure he doesn't become brain dead, Katsuki let slip. After thinking about his unwilling role as a nanny, it was Kaminari who perked up at this. It was not often he met someone who had a side effect like his. Oh, his quirk can short-circuit his brain too. No, I mean his quirk is, tried to explain Katsuki before being stopped by 𝗧𝗂, who was tired and clearly not well. Kaken, I'm not okay yet to explain everything about my quirk. Since 𝗧𝗂's quirk seemed powerful, most of the boys except Kota, Ajiro and Todoroki wondered why he was not comfortable explaining how it worked, especially when 𝗧𝗂 was playing the showman just earlier. It was quite jarring to have him one moment trying to be social before suddenly being meek. The second period was fun. Ectoplasm was teaching mathematics, and the break allowed the different students to present themselves. Once again, it was Mina who insisted on that. Hoi, everyone. Now that we can finally rest a bit, how about everyone introduce themselves? Most people agreed either loudly or silently, while 𝗧𝗂 was preparing something on his phone. 𝗔𝗂𝗧 𝐔𝐬𝐽, Frankai's par Monsieur said with a beautiful French accent, the eccentric blonde. He then winked at 𝗧𝗂, both boys recognizing the other from the exam and how they briefly teamed up. My quirk is navel laser. It allows me to shoot a laser from my navel. Simple but brilliant and powerful. 𝗬𝗵𝗄. Muhahaha. Mina Ashido, and I'm a minor mutant as you can see, though my quirk is acid. It allows me, well, to produce acid through my skin. I love chatting and gossiping, so be sure I will learn all of your secrets, the horny girl said playfully, watching everyone carefully with a big smile. Interesting quirk nonetheless to 𝗧𝗂. 𝐂𝐬𝐬𝐴𝐵𝐴𝐴𝐵 ribbit. I'm a frog mutant, ribbit. Izuku almost raised his hand when he heard that before Katsuki slammed it back onto the desk. He would have to ask for details later. I like watching things, swimming and practicing, ribbit, and good food, said the frog girl with as much emotion as Todoroki. 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏, he announced out loud, proudly presenting himself as he stuck out his chest rigidly. My quirk is a simple mutant quirk called Engine, which is normal in my family. Yep, lined up perfectly with Izuku's analysis. He was most likely 𝗵𝗄𝗻's brother. Maybe he could ask him for 𝗵𝗄𝗻's autograph. I like running, heroes and rules. 𝗓𝗏𝗄 𝗓𝗏𝗏 and well, Izuku pretty much said everything about me, said a girl who wanted to hide in a hole for a bit. 𝗵𝗄𝗏 𝗓𝗏𝗏, said the boy with a massive and clearly powerful tail. I like to train martial arts and French comics, especially old ones about Marsupilami. Yuga clearly smiled at him. My family has them all. I'll lend some of the oldest ones if you want, which was answered by a thumb raised to the French. Also, Izuku noted his interest in martial arts. Maybe they could train together. Denki Kaminari, and I have the power of thunder, said the loud boy while showing a bit of his quirk to everyone. And I like music, girls and of course fun. Most of the girls looked at him a bit warily, but since he did not insist and sat back quietly, it was just for a few seconds. Ajiro Kirishima, my quirk allows me to become as hard as a rock and to be manly, said Shitty Hair as Katsuki called him, liking more and more of the man. I love to train and I want to be a hero like Crimson Riot. Okay, now it was official. Katsuki liked that guy and tried to write the name in his notebook. In it, he also had Ochako and Mina's in there. The first because she seemed a bit fun and also beat his score for the throwing, and Mina because he felt a fellow kinship for trolling. But Kirishima, the man, knew Crimson Riot, one of his favorite heroes. I'm Koji Koda and I like animals. I can talk to them, said the golem, clearly intimidated by the classroom and how boisterous people were. Just before petting a rabbit who looked at everyone with anger. No one was to bully the only one who managed to tame the beast of Kerbanok, Rikido Sato. I can turn sugar into power. And on a related note, I like to bake sweets. I actually thought of becoming a baker if I did not succeed in entering you, and many girls perked up at the idea of free sweets. Mizo Shoji. I can change and manipulate my appendages freely, creating organs too. I like ninjutsu, manga and practicing zen, said another of the calm men in the classroom, quietly and simply. Meanwhile, Katsuki had pulled the cuff of Izuku's uniform, locking his hand under the desk. He knew it would only slow his friend. Kyoka Gyro, said the punkette, toying with her ear jack. I'm a simple mutant with excellent hearing and I can amplify my sound. Therefore I can actually hear everything Izuku has been mumbling about everyone's quirks between his teeth. Everything Katsuki said about him seems right, especially the part about what seems to be his type. He muttered a lot more about them. Oh, apparently it was a surprise uppercut from the punkette who went into Katsuki's notebook, cackling madly. He needed to talk with her and Mina for a complete report to Auntie. Meanwhile, Izuku was trying to knock himself out by smashing his head against the desk. Hantashiro, master of the duct tape. My motto is there's nothing I can't put duct tape on. Also, I really like old comics like Spider-Man. Not going to lie, I got inspired from the comics for how I use my quirk, said the man with a carefree smile. 𝗵𝗃𝗏 𝗧𝗏𝗄𝐵𝐴𝐵𝐴. I'm inhabited by a creature of darkness named Dark Shadow, and he is a huge nerd who needs players for his D&D campaign. He is actually pretty good and I play too, said his quirk, emerging from his chest while his master grumbled. He is alive. Can we have details? Do you have? Suddenly, Izuku was stopped by Katsuki, who slapped the back of his head, shutting the quirk fanatic up. And most of the girls wondered if they should count Tokoyami in Izuku's radar. I'm Shoto Todoroki. I can use ice, said simply the coldest boy before Izuku added. In fire. Everyone looked at Izuku, especially Todoroki, with a bit of venom in his eyes. What? It is pretty obvious. He was literally steaming during the exercise. Todoroki sighed and corrected himself. I can use ice and will only use ice, not my fire. And I'm going to be the best hero. Suddenly, Todoroki managed to be on the shit lists of both Katsuki and Izuku. Was he saying he would bet them with a handicap when they trained with all their hearts? When, in Izuku's case, his quirk could kill him. He had a perfect quirk, even the blind could see that. And he wanted it to go to waste. For Izuku, who lived most of his life quirkless, it did not sit well. He wanted to teach the boy a lesson about life, seriously. Katsuki and him looked at each other and nodded. It was one of the moments when both friends agreed. I'm Toru Hagakure and I'm a mutant who is fully invisible. Nice to meet you all. And you're the most obvious crush for Izuku right now. We all saw how you looked at him. Surprisingly, it was not Katsuki who teased her, but Mina with a smile. Hey, you can't prove that. I can see you, Ribbit. Suddenly, everyone looked at Tsuyu, who was returning the same kind of stare. Frogs have thermal visions, Ribbit. I can actually see Toru. Though, Toru blessed the fact no one could see her becoming redder than Midoriya. Well, stop teasing the nerd, because I am here. I am Katsuki Bakugo and I will become the next #1. I love exploding things and training. And knitting, added Izuku helpfully with a smile, happy to get back at his friend for once, who stopped his show for a second. Deku and I have pictures. He is surprisingly good at it. Katsuki thought about deleting Mina from his notebook as she asked for them. My turn then. I'm Izuku Midori as soon Sako shut it Kaken, even if I hope it is true. As you all have seen, I like analysis, card games and magic tricks. My quirk is named in-game and I can summon what is printed on cards. However, as I'm a very late bloomer, my quirk isn't fully formed yet and using too much of it can be bad for me. Surprisingly, it was Yuga who once again nodded his head, and people looked weirdly at him. He looked away. I had a cousin like Izuku. Oh, Izuku felt bad for the French man and smiled sadly at him. He knew the number thanks to Atsuhiko. To make it better, I'm Hitoshi Shinzo. I love video games, reading, and I'm pretty interested in Tokoyami's D&D campaign. I can brainwash people with simple commands, but don't worry, I won't use it unless it's for good. Everyone simply nodded at Hitoshi, who appreciated that apparently weirder had been seen and therefore his villainous quirk was not, well, the most interesting thing in class. And finally, I'm Momo Yaoruzu. I like tea, studying, and painting. My quirk is called creation and I can use lipids from my body to create anything. I know the blueprint from my skin. This time, Katsuki simply gagged Izuku before he could ask anything. Sorry, but if I didn't do that, we would be here until tomorrow before he ended his question. We're still working on that, but I think our class isn't full of extras. Maybe, said Katsuki with a smile. This evening was going to be fun though. Auntie 𝐻𝐽 would love the report. Might and magic. 𝗏𝐻𝐽 was surfing the web for Katsuki's next birthday gift. As she hoped, Izuku's crush was in their class and apparently she was a nice girl. On a side note, Katsuki decided to try to remember the names of more than 3 people. That was thrice the usual number. And for once, not one of those people was Izuku. As far as she knew, Mitsuki was also overjoyed to know that. Now, all she wanted was to have her man at home to let him know about everything and how Izuku might have a girlfriend before the end of his first year. However, 𝗏𝐽 was wondering where Atsuhiro was. Oh, she knew him. He was probably doing something funny and not too dangerous. Well, currently, Mr. Compress was in a necklace. More exactly, he managed to replace a pearl with one of his marbles in a necklace worn by the girlfriend of the leader of the largest drug trafficking rings in Japan, Mizunaka Tabai, Gang Orca's arch nemesis, as the man had a similar quirk and often fought him to a standstill. Their main difference was that Gang Orca was, well, an orca while Mizunaka was apparently a Mako shark mutant. As tall as Orca was and somehow more muscular, he was one of the most feared mutants and a firm supporter of the Mutant Association of Supreme Hegemony. The name was dumb. The members, well, they wanted to make Mutant Quirk the rulers of the new society. And to make a more Darwinist society. They often indulged in kidnapping and murder, not to mention hate crimes. So, yes, the name was dumb, the men behind it dangerous. To add salt to the injury, the problem was that thanks to Mizunaka, they also had one of the biggest underground smuggling rings in Japan, if not the biggest in the whole world. How did they do it? They actually mapped a lot of the deep seas and swam. They had underwater layers all along the way, and while it took time, they had the reputation of always delivering what they were asked to deliver. Mizunaka always made sure to not get linked back to 𝐴 as it would hurt his image as a powerful trafficker, therefore upgrading his villain ranking from a solid A to a small S. Therefore he would be someone who would be on a serious watch list, with heroes like Selkie helping Gang Orca locating him for sure before they called the Heavy like Endeavor or even All Might. If Mizunaka was strong enough to fight Orca to a standstill, he also knew his limits and was very good in muddying his support to the mash. So, when the evil had brains and brawn, when he knew how to hide and avoid the spotlight, only he could bring it down. All those who fought Mr. Compress thought you were necessarily unconscious when you were in one of his marbles. It was untrue. He could choose if you were or were not capable of seeing and hearing what was outside. So, if he managed to place himself into one and to land where he needed to infiltrate a place, he had a nice head start. Right now, Atsuhiro was sitting in his marble, watching everything the girl was doing. Mizunaka owned a nightclub in the port. To enter it, you needed to be a mutant and to be invited by someone on the checklist. In other words, a regular in the club for more than 3 months and having willingly consumed some of the drugs inside it, or some of the lesser known but nonetheless illegal products. However, the inner circle, where Mizunaka was once again something else. Only those who had his trust could enter it. 2 shark mutants guarded the door and both of them actually had a minor quirk that allowed them to smell hostility or fear. Both times the police tried to get one of Mizunaka's inner circle to betray him, it was made known to him days, even hours after the betrayal. Then came the second part where Mako was a genius. He did not kill the mole. He took them to a room where he could be alone with his former friend. If the mole was truthful and did it for reasons like protecting his family or avoiding jail, 𝗵𝗃 forgave them and helped them escape the police. They often became his contacts in South America or China. If they were traitors, however, for money or to take his place, they were left alive but in a state so pitiful that killing them was a mercy. He had to do that only once. Since then, no more operations were made and no warrant was given to raid his nightclub. But now, 𝗵𝗃 had to face something new and devious. Someone who was not afraid to be part of a necklace on the neck of a moray girl for 20 hours in the hope she would decide to make a surprise for her fabulous boyfriend. If 𝗵𝗃 was not someone promoting the supremacy of a race above all others, he would have been actually a criminal Mr. 𝗵𝗃 would have totally overlooked. Well, that and a certain something he wanted to get. That was why the operation Enter the Subnautica happened. The first step had been to tail 𝗵𝗃 and identify his weak point. It turned out to be a girl he apparently saved from people racist against mutants, especially the not beautiful kind like Ryukyu or Maruko. In this case, a moray girl named 𝗧𝗵𝗲, a sweet librarian who enjoyed coffee in her free time. Apparently, she thought her boyfriend was simply a club owner after he saved her by punching the hell out of her aggressors. It was then quite the love story between them. The second step had been to break into her apartment and switch places with a pearl on her necklace or otherwise to simply hide in her bag. However, it was inconvenient as it did not allow him to see what was going on around him. In a quiet place like a museum, it was okay. Atsuhiro could use what he was hearing to tell what was going on. In a nightclub, not so much. Then, he had to follow, with a book in his marble to pass time, as he waited for the end of 𝗧𝗵𝗲's day. Seriously, the moray girl was such a sweetie. She even rearranged children's books to allow kids to more easily reach those of their age. It was quite jarring to see her put on makeup in the evening, before she went to the Subnautica. Apparently, it was named after a great game from before the Quark era, and the giant fish trying to eat some poor schmuck were fake ones called leviathans. That's not going to be his fate, right? The inside was loud. Atsuhiro detested the kind of music that was played. Too loud, the sounds were not coherent, and the light was hurting his eyes. Apparently, it was the same for his means of locomotion, as she rushed deeply inside, clearly knowing her way. So, as 𝗧𝗵𝗲 went in front of the shark guards, 𝗵𝗃 tensed himself a bit. Technically speaking, if they could sense him inside the marble, the mission would be highly more difficult but still doable. However, the magician would clearly prefer he could do the job cleanly. No one hurt, a perfect job. So, as he looked in the eyes, inside the marble the guard, he sighed with delight as 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was invited further inside. The vigilante had used this tactic more than once, but he preferred to be careful. No one could say if one day, one of the guards wouldn't be able to smell or sense him. Quirks were weird after all. The second level of the nightclub was the polar opposite. The luminosity was low and you had a hard time seeing anything. It was actually quite logical since most of the people of the inner circle were deep-sea fish mutants. All of them had various senses allowing them to see in the darkness. Also, Mr. 𝗵𝗃 was surprised to hear the music. It was a whale song. Contrary to everyone's belief in the pre-Quark era, they actually managed to survive and now they were protected. They were not a lot, but they were slowly getting back to a good level of population. But this narrator digresses. What you really want is the story. Quickly enough, Mr. 𝗵𝗃 meets for the first time the Mako, the trafficker. He was indeed powerfully built, and he wore golden chains and various jewels of wealth, but not any of taste. His teeth were highly sharpened, and he smiled like Bakugo when he saw an opportunity to embarrass Izuku. All in all, he was the stereotypical bad boy, until 𝗧𝗵𝗲 began to hug him, seemingly making him happy. He quickly went from criminal mastermind to smitten boyfriend. Mr. 𝗵𝗃 hated that kind of happy bad guy. It always made them harder to destroy when they weren't cackling maniacs. And 𝗧𝗵𝗲, can you get ready? I have something to ask of you, please, said the shark while softly smiling to the love of his life, who then went to the restroom to freshen up. Oh God. Now, Atsuhiro actually almost felt bad if the man was going to propose. It was time to move. Now at the same time, on the building just in front of the Subnautica, two shadows stand in the night. Before one of them began pouring tea. He apparently forgot it was quite windy, as the tea flew away in the night. Not one to care for such a trivial thing, he asked his sweetheart, "My dear 𝗵𝗃, is that here?" "Yes, gentle, it is here. This nightclub doesn't respect the sanitary protocol for the food and the various liquors inside. It made some people sick and the owner just threw money at the sanitary inspection. Also, they might be quirkist. Well, I hope the camera is on, because now, it's show time." When the guardian saw an old man in a dandy suit, he first thought the old guy was lost and was going to tell him to fuck off. He clearly did not expect Gentle to destroy the wall by using him. To be fair, he was a hammerhead shark, so it was actually logical. Since he was busy tying up 𝗧𝗵𝗲, 𝗵𝗃 did not hear the commotion immediately. The loud music helped mask most of it. Still, if he remembered the building's blueprints correctly, If he put his hand just there, he could compress the wall and get into the shark's room. He then just had to get out of the place quickly by simply flushing himself in the toilet. Not the most elegant escape, he knew. But if people did not know how the hell you escaped, it was always better. Not to mention, they would have to first understand his objectives there since he would replace the wall. So, as Mr. Compress was quietly rummaging through Mizunaki's desk and cupboard, the noise outside began to grow louder and louder. Compress corrected himself. It was the sound of people fighting. They were either crazy or strong enough to attack the stronghold of the mutant. Nonetheless, it meant he had a diversion to get out, but also he had to speed up his search. He sighed. He would have preferred to make both his escape and his search as clean as possible, but he wanted to make sure he took everything. So, that's what he did. And that was when he stole the last library that Atsuhiro discovered the proof that Mizunaka was indeed a member of MASH, not just a supporter. Mr. Compress cracked his neck. Usually, he had a no-kill policy for his escapades. But that didn't mean he was incapable of doing it. That also didn't mean he had anything against maiming. So, as Mr. Compress was going to use the battle outside as a diversion to loot from the aforementioned criminal, he saw a squid break the wall, apparently propelled by an insane strength heading towards him. Katsuki roared out in laughter, incredibly happy for some reason. Kaken? Asked a puzzled Izuku, wondering what the hell was going on, since it was Midnight's class and she actually disliked unneeded noise. Nothing, just, I felt karma doing a good thing, explained the blonde, before taking notes again. Actually, Atsuhiro dodged the barman from the first floor with his usual grace. Well, it was settled. The people attacking the place were strong. Myohaha, Mr. Mizunaka, you are being judged live for the sad state of your bar and the fact bugs were found in the peanuts. Atsuhiro actually thought of just going through the flush. Then he remembered what he found and walked through the hole. So, it was vigilantes with a stream. He could use that. Denjiro Tabata was not the sharpest tool, he knew that. Otherwise, his results when he was in a heroic course would have been better. As for his strength, well, it was the power of despair and because he had literally nothing else to do. So he trained his quirk and his fighting skill to the best of his abilities. Nonetheless, he knew people tended to think he was just an useless grandpa simply because he liked good clothes and he had gray hair. The only one taking him seriously was La Brava. So, yes, quite hilariously, he was capable of trashing a lot of people. However, his name was Gentle Criminal, not Brutal Criminal, unless of course he was against bad guys. It helped him ease his conscience and he had the impression of almost being a hero. However, Gentle knew when he was fighting something stronger than him. Like, way stronger than him. He gulped after he finished trashing live the two sharks inside the building. They actually had a good footage of the insect between the bottles of beer and some of the good wine. Something that would have angered a certain tall, dark and cloudy barman. However, as they went deeper into the building, they were expecting a normal owner for the nightclub, hence Gentle calling Mizunaka loudly at first. Then, they saw the giant. The shark was almost 3 meters tall and he was certainly just as large. Mizunaka's arms were almost as big as Gentle himself and it was pure muscle. La Brava behind him also knew the man clearly meant business and tugged on Gentle's shirt. We need to run. Now, he is a class of villain Gentle. She was the brains and she memorized the whole list. If she said that, they needed to run. Actually, they should have never gone there in the first place. Denjiro was quite proud of his barriers now, but he also knew they were not all powerful. Still, he instantly built 3 of them in front of him. Maximum elasticity, size minimal for more resistance, perfectly calculating the trajectory of the shark-heavy punch. Why? Simply because he knew a thing people tended to forget about mutants, especially the big ones. He was right to do that, as Denjiro was not happy to be right. Most mutants are as powerful as they were quick. Mizunaka had blasted through his barriers quite easily, and it barely slowed him. Barely was good enough, as Denjiro had the time to catch La Brava in his arms. Barriers were already made on the ground, allowing him to jump and to find refuge a brief instant on the ceiling. La Brava, we run. And stack. A simple sound. Just as Mizunaka was smiling like the predator he was, ready to attack the 2 fools who trashed his bar before he had his grand evening with his sweet Utsubai. A sound, like a cane tapping the ground. Not like, actually, it was a cane and everyone still in the inner circle looked at the origin of the sound. La Brava and Gentle Criminal were then shocked, frightened and excited by the sight. One might even say they squealed with delight. Just from the hole they made with the barman from before, emerged a legend among vigilantes. A lone wolf, and it was a very popular theory that the man in front of them was the descendant of one of the big criminals from the dawn of Quirk era, Mr. Compress, who was wearing his angry mask. Don't end your stream. If you will excuse me, right now, I'll hijack your show, said the man while he was readjusting his gloves. Oh, the magician in person. That is strange. I don't remember doing anything that. I saw your secret room, you sick bastard. That statement cut short the affable Mizunaka, who had the decency to look a bit regretful. Oh well, that isn't a problem if none of you stay alive. However, to be fair, I'm doing it for others. I myself find it tasteless. 𝗃𝗃 believed him. He knew human flesh was really disgusting to sharks. He probably did not like it either. Suddenly, as 𝗃𝗃 expected the two streamers to run away while he was speaking with the shark, he saw the one who was a bit styled after himself, clearly a fan. Well, he saw gentle criminal mimicking a bow, and suddenly the couch he was next to hit 𝗃𝗃 on the head. Not that it actually damages the shark, but points for the effort. After all, 𝗃𝗃 was used to fighting Orca at his full power, and now he was growling, ready to throw something at them. 𝗃𝗃 said with a smile the oldest, taking his stance against. On it, gentle. The apparently young girl jumped and rolled herself as a ball before being launched across the room. When the shark tried to intercept her, both higher-class fighters were surprised to see her change trajectory mid-air. Clearly, the duo was trained and worked well together. Why the hell 𝗃𝗃 never heard of them, especially as they were his fans. These two were the kind of people he was looking for. He did not even need to tell the girl to run behind him to film the room. The camerawoman clearly knew what she needed to film. The magician just hoped she had a strong stomach. He put on his angry mask for a good reason. 𝗃𝗃 was massaging his neck. He had a good idea of the quirk of the fool who attacked him. However, 𝗃𝗃 was another thing. A power that was basically a one-hit kill. The user was used to close combat, and for once 𝗃𝗃 was serious. Every high-class criminal like him knew 𝗃𝗃 doesn't like to kill. However, his angry mask meant he was not just going to reveal the skeletons in your closet. He was going to beat the hell out of you with them. So, it was going to be mainly a fight between him and 𝗃𝗃, because 𝗃𝗃 was in the same situation as him. If he hit him, there was no doubt of what would happen. He had the power to destroy all bones inside of him. All he needed was an edge like what he had right in his vial. His personal brand of trigger mixed with blood. Trigger made by a lab he knew in South America who perfected the original drug. Blood, well, everyone knew about a shark's frenzy, right? However, 𝗃𝗃 was not going to let him take the drug. In fact, the magician just threw a marble at him. To counter it, 𝗃𝗃 threw at him a piece of the defunct couch. Well, the bigger half who was still intact. Still, as Atsuhiro began to dodge, he had the pleasant surprise to see his marble and the couch slow in a somewhat invisible elastic shield, who then hit full power 𝗃𝗃, while gentle criminal fell from the ceiling. Muahaha, fear my mighty quirk. I may have failed heroics, but I'm still quite good. Note to self, Atsuhiro thought. Find whoever expelled that man. He had the spirit. He had the power. He had the style. Gentle, if I heard right. When we manage to take 𝗃𝗃 down, consider yourself and your assistant hired as my assistants. 𝗃𝗃 bellowed out a drugged-up 𝗃𝗃 who took the chance to take his drug. 𝗃𝗃 took a stance. Tanjiro did too. I can slow him down, even in that state, told Gentle, before saying his code phrase to a livid 𝗃𝗃 who got back to them. Because I have the power of 𝐸. Before he had the time to say anything, he was already radiating with 𝗃𝗃's quirk, as she was almost crying, her face buried in his pants. Gentle, I know you aren't violent, but that man, beat him please. Gentle did not ask what 𝗃𝗃 saw. She was the strongest woman he knew, and 𝗃𝗃 made her sad. The triggered shark and 𝗃𝗃 had a hard time understanding how Gentle embedded him into the ceiling. Usually, when the Mako charged something into that mode, unless it was Orca himself, the target was dead. So how the hell the dandy went from barely blocking one of his hit to suddenly empowered by pink fumes and fighting him to a standstill in his second form? The beast inside him roared even louder, as he destroyed the ceiling to propulse himself toward his target with all his might. The impact was hard. However, he did not hit anything, as Tanjiro was actually already in the air, dodging easily. Sorry, but I have the most beautiful woman by my side. I can't lose, said Gentle, while 𝗃𝗃 took 𝗃𝗃 with him aside and asked the girl, the fuck is happening? Oh, it's my quirk. I can boost as much as I love my target. Seeing as the man was now beginning to fracture the walls with the club owner, hurting him bit by bit, Atsuhiro openly applauded. Well, that is quite the love you have for him. He isn't too. I'm actually 25 and he's 31. We have known each other for 3 years now, said the woman with a blank stare. Apparently, it was not the first time it had been asked, and it was tiring. Well, you're a cute couple, approved 𝗃𝗃, letting Tanjiro have his big fight. How the hell did I never hear of you before? I mean, you are clearly not your average vigilante. Far from it. 𝗃𝗃 sighed, as 𝗃𝗃 had managed to throw Gentle against a wall by using a sound shockwave made by his hand. Before the gentleman used the rebound to hit him in the nose, the weakest point for a shark. It could have been dangerous for him if 𝗃𝗃 from earlier did not explode at that moment into an armed flashbang. Who promptly exploded. As 𝗃𝗃 told Izuku, in a fight, everything was fair. Glorious and epic move. Sure, nice to have one. But he was pragmatic. While 𝗃𝗃 was still a bit knocked out by the grenade, 𝗃𝗃 stole his kneecaps, literally. and his elbows. Less than 2 seconds for all of them. If Atsuhiro had fought immediately with Denjiro, the fight would have indeed been shorter. However, apparently, the duo needed content and, well, with him as a guest star and saving Gentle against a powerful criminal, oh boy, it should get them some views. Erg, I knew I should have refused that job, said Mizunaka, who then fell face first on the floor. Seriously, last time he got a job like that. Human meat, seriously. They paid well, said the shark boss in a matter-of-factly manner while he lied on the floor, currently incapacitated due to the lack of kneecaps. Oh, he would heal. Not the first time it happened. Apparently sharks had a really good minor healing factor. If anything, he would have a thicker skin later. However, can I ask for a favor? Since you probably looted my office. Atsuhiro had a good idea of what Mizunaka wanted and threw a small box at him. Seriously, she's wasted on you. The boss was beaten. Both knew it, and Mizunaka had enough chill, even post-trigger, to not rage around with his limbs that were not broken but not functional. Also, are you sure she will, run away with you? Or wait until you end your sentence in jail? Because you're clearly going to Tartarus. The shark laughed. Of course he wouldn't say anything incriminating as long as the cam was on. Oh well, then he got tackled as Mr. Compress got shuffled to the side. Oh, apparently mores can escape ties. It was to be noted for after. So, I will leave you there. Ma'am, I would advise you. Utsubai tried to punch Atsuhiro, who blocked it easily as Denjiro suddenly fell next to him, completely exhausted. Apparently, 𝗵𝗲𝗺's boost was indeed a powerful weapon, and apparently the man knew when to unleash it. He would have probably used it to run away if Mr. Compress had not been here. Atsuhiro smiled behind his mask as he marbled both his new sidekicks. Both had access to sound as he put them in his pocket. Best of luck for both of you. Oh, and by the way, dear Utsubai, it was Maki who stole your sandwich. Tata police were going to come and check the bar soon enough. They were going to be corrupt cops in the pocket of the shark. But he will have to relocate all his operations. He had to run away. And he had to do it the easiest way he had. Thankfully, 𝗵𝗲𝗺 wouldn't capture it for the stream. The hard part would be to take a shower before going home. After all, he had everything he wanted. Proof of Mizunaka's crimes who would force him to stop everything, and more importantly, a green diamond a criminal sold on the black market. It had a particular shade of green, exactly like in Ko's eyes. Hey, she deserved the most beautiful ring. And that is how I got the ring. Atsuhiro finished explaining after taking a shower at Magna's apartment, while Gentle and 𝗵𝗲𝗺 were sleeping on the couch. So basically, you kicked the biggest smuggling business in Japan in the nuts and crippled a rank of villain just to steal a diamond because you thought it would look good on your girlfriend's engagement ring. Deadpan 𝗔𝗫𝗄 Akaguro, who was also laying around. You are what the kids these days call a simp. While Mr. Compress excluded him from his poker night, 𝗔𝗫𝗄 was still on good terms with Magni, who was currently busy making the ring for her friend. Hey, every girl needs a hobby. Hers was crafting jewelry. She could have been a professional at it, However, you almost kill someone who was trying to kill you for being different, that someone being a hero, and then you get branded as a villain. It happened only thrice. The fourth time, Stain was there. It is self-explanatory. Hey, she deserved it. Never had a woman who could make me feel like that except her. Had you met the night nurses, you would, said matter-of-factly Magni as she continued her work. She wanted it to be a masterpiece, and the fact Atsuhiro was also paying was nice. Being friends did not mean not paying them. Yes, you talked about them already and how they disappeared years ago. Still, I maintain my opinion that my wife is better, said Atsuhiro as he got out of the shower before drying himself. Thank God he did not smell like an open sewer anymore. Now, he just had to drop the evidence at Night Eye's office. Surely he could make some use of it. Compress. When the night nurse looked at me when I went to her because I cut my nose, I shat myself. Literally. Then, she threatened me that if I even went to them once more for a dumb wound, the coroner would have trouble determining if my death was due to exsanguination by the amputation of my junior or suffocation due to said amputated member obstrucating my throat, explained Stain, cleaning one of his knives. He was clearly still remembering it vividly. What? Both vigilantes looked at the hero killer, while 𝗵𝗲𝗺 was editing from her computer the stream and making a nicer video answer. She told him she would castrate him and make him choke on it. She seemed nice. Denjiro nodded, knowing better than having a different opinion than his woman on the subject. Okay, she seemed like a fun woman, but I prefer the one I have, laughed Atsuhiro, and Ko sneezed a bit. Someone was probably talking about her crazy past with Mitsuki. Fun times. However, they had to stop when Katsuki got his quirk and Hisashi died. Yeah, I still remember the day they retired. I made a guy that I mistook for the heart thief fall off the boarding staircase of his plane, said Magni, quite sad at the fact that the information thief. Damn girl, you know how to pick your targets. Yeah, turned out it was just some asshole leaving his wife and kid because the son was quirkless. Atsuhiro stopped for a moment before laughing. Nah, it had nothing to do with Hisashi, right? Stain stopped for a second and thought back. They were not talking about Hisashi Midoriya, right? Because while the man survived his fall, Atsuhiro did help fuck up the first aid by stopping his heart during defibrillation. That man had insulted All Might. 𝗵𝗲 thought for a bit about that time she wanted to try her hacking skill for a bit and caused a car crash with an ambulance with an automated car. Gentle Criminal halted for a time and tried to think if they still had leaves of tea. He was the only man in the room who was actually clueless about the discussion. OMAKE time. Suddenly a yellow caterpillar hobo entered the room. Before anyone could do anything, Katsuki packed back his bag. Nope, fuck it, I'm out of this. Aizawa was used to provoke this reaction in some criminals and alumni. Not a kid he never saw. I'm not taking classes with 𝗳𝗲𝗵𝗲 yelled a way too done Katsuki, a kid who apparently knew him and his identity. That was a new one. He was going to start asking questions before he got interrupted by the green kid laughing. The blonde boy looked at his friend. If looks could kill, the class would be the crime scene for mass murder on Izuku. Of course you knew fucking eraser spammer. Momo was actually the first to understand what was about and was overjoyed. Oh, you both play heroes. I play an island deck. So the rich kid plays a pay-to-win deck, of fucking course. This guy right here is someone who only knows to play Eraserhead. But not only does he play him every time, but he created the whole deck centered on him getting back up every time. He also had every team-up power-up with him, including the special fake wedding cards with him and Miss Joke. You were just mad I just beat you 200 times. Bad choice of words. Katsuki promptly yeeted Izuku out of the window. Luckily they were on the ground floor, but still. All Aizawa could suddenly realize was, wait, people made cards of me. They know about my marriage. Why the fuck don't I have royalties? You, Yaoyorozu, call your father. Now, Momo was at that moment terrified enough that she actually called. After a few rings, the phone clicked and her dad's voice rang out on speaker. Hi sweetheart, it's odd that you'd call me today of all days. How's school going? He gets cut off as Aizawa snatches her cell phone and shouts into the microphone. I know you're there, Yaoyorozu, you big fucking nerd. Where's my goddamn money?